Hello. Welcome to the Katie Halper Show. So excited to be here on this wonderful evening with Jack Allison. And we have
Hello.
Hello, Jack. How are you?
I'm just fine. It's been a little while. It's been a couple weeks, since I've been on this show, but I'm glad to be back now. I was sick off my COVID shot last week, and I'm glad to be back with the chat that will be getting mad at me very soon. I'm sure.
No, we're not gonna. Well, we're not gonna engage. We're gonna be very discerning.
Gotcha.
And the mad chat. It's a
Gotcha.
mad chat world out there.
Right.
It's a mad
Sure.
mad chat. Mad.
It's a mad chat world.
Yeah,
out there.
exactly. So
To be honest with you, Katie, I shouldn't.
Please-
I don't
no,
need to get
please
into
do
it,
be
but
honest.
but they need to make more, mad world type movies. Road Trip was an attempt at it, but this is a great genre of movie where a bunch of people have to go to, one place. That's that shit. I like it.
Oh, is that like The Hangover?
It's like not really like Rat Race and Mad World are kind of like the two of that genre where it's just a bunch of. It's almost like The Amazing Race or something like that, but in movie form.
Huh.
The Hangover is more like. Jeez, I don't even know.
High art.
It's like it's high art is what it is. It's
Yeah.
high art. I don't know. The Hangover is closer to like. Frankly, like almost like comedy noir or something. Like they're trying to figure out a little mystery of some kind. I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah. I think I saw maybe all of them.
All the Hangovers?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've certainly seen all the Hangovers, and I wouldn't recommend that experience. I wouldn't
Yeah.
recommend it to anybody.
Well, you know what? I got to say something, Jack.
What's that?
Couple things. One is we have a great show.
Mm-hmm.
We got a great show coming down the pike for you with Eugene Puryear back from Haiti. Very excited to talk to Eugene about that. Then we have a very good chat following that with OK Fox, who hosts a very good art labor podcast.
That's a great podcast. Everybody better check out the Art and Labor podcast.
That is more of a threat than an invitation. I feel like the way you said that. Which is actually,
you better fucking check it out. I okay. I got to be honest with you. Okay. This is the only time this has ever happened. I was in New York. This made my wife Kate feel like the coolest anyone has ever felt. But we were just in New York, like walking, and OK came out of like a restaurant and was like, "Is that Jack and Kate?" And like I have to still thank OK for that moment because OK watches the stream, and so. For my wife, being recognized by someone in New York from stuff online, I think was maybe the greatest experience of her life. She'll still tell that story of being recognized on the street in New York.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
Where was it?
Geez, I'm gonna look like an asshole now, but it was
That's
like
okay.
it was like Brooklyn. I don't know my New York well enough to be honest with you.
That's okay. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Well, so yeah, we have great guests coming down the pike. I'm really saying that a lot. Coming down the pike.
The pike.
I'm leaning into
just
that.
like they
It's
would
old
in It's a
folksy.
Mad World.
I don't actually
all those
know
cars
what it's a
coming around the pike.
mad world. What is it? Remind me what it is.
It's a movie. It's a classic comedy movie. Where it's like I said, it's like a bunch of people are trying to get to like one guy's, I think like riches or something like that. Like
what,
a guy
what
like
time period are we talking? Like when was
we're
it
talking
made?
like this is the 60s. This is a 60s comedy,
got it.
so it's
I feel like maybe we
probably
talked about
got
this
some
before.
problematic elements, but not that I would know off the top of my head.
Right.
But yeah, it was just like a big cast comedy movie where a bunch of people are trying to find a treasure, and they're all driving in cars trying to get there first. It's like Rat Race, but it does not have Smash Mouth in it.
Wait, Rat Race? That's not the one. Oh, that's the Rat Pack. I was thinking. of.
Rat
Jeez
Race is a
Louise.
different movie that's like It's a Mad World, but they drive through a Smash Mouth concert,
Got it.
Instead.
All right. Well, look, Nadeem Farah is very happy that that Jack is back.
That's right. I
Yeah.
certainly am back.
He's certainly
back.
And Kenny, I'm only asking because you showed Kenny to the chat.
Oh,
But
yes.
Kenny's
Kenny's okay. I'm trying
Kenny's
to see
a
if she's
dog.
in here. I think Kate has taken Kenny for a walk, but Yeah, Kenny had to go for surgery on just on Thursday here. Kenny, come here. 1 second. I'm gonna grab her. Kenny, come here.
By the way, guys, Bodhi made her debut on Rising. Oh, hi, Kenny. So cute. Oh my gosh, so cute. How old is she?
Now I have to hold her very strangely, because she's got a big, bunch of sutures on her, across her chest right now. She had to have a tumor removed, and we're still fingers crossed, waiting to see if it's a high grade or a low grade. But things look good, and she certainly has bounced back after surgery. She was feeling pretty bad for a day, but now she's doing good.
She's really cute. How old is she?
She is, I guess 7, maybe now, 6 or 7 at this point.
Am I on the wrong side, by the way, of the thing?
No, I think you're supposed to be on the left side. I think that's typically how it is.
Yeah.
I think I'm too far in profile. Sometimes I'm like, wow, I really am like at such a side angle, but that's life.
That's life. I mean,
that's a big old that's life for me.
That's a big old that ain't it, Chief. That profile ain't it, Chief. No, I like it. I think it's good. I think you're
thank
more. You. Yeah. So 7 doggy years or human years? Someone asked.
Well, it'll be human years.
Right. That would be how old in doggy years? 7.
If you're 7 in doggy years, it would be a 1 human year old dog. And Kenny is, I think, now, 7 dog years or 7 human years of age, and I guess 49 years of dog age.
Right.
It took me a little too long to do that 7 times 7 math, to be honest with you.
Well, you know what? That's for calculators and math people are for.
And that's one of the ones you have to memorize in 4th grade too. So that's
Which
extra
one?
bad. 7 by 7. It's not like we're up to like 13 or something.
I know.
49. 49.
Okay. Yeah.
Get up to the 13s and 14s. That's no good. That's bad news for me.
Right.
But
there's no
I should know the
excuse for it.
single digit,
seriously.
multiplication tables.
By the way, my dad, I was talking about like my show on Thursday and Sunday, and he's like, "But Thursday's date night, right?" And my mom and I were like, "What? What do you guys have date?" My mom's like, "We have date night." He's like, "No, I just thought that people go out for dates on Thursdays."
Oh, like every Thursday people have a date night
it's
of
totally
some kind?
I don't know why I brought that in. What does that have to do with numbers? I'm just really, this is one of these atypically loose openings, not as structured and rigid as usually.
We're just having a party over here.
We're having a party. Everybody's having a party swinging, dancing to the music on the radio.
Yeah, that's right.
To quote Joe Biden, turn on the radio. Yeah. So today was Easter, right?
That's right.
And congratulations, Jew are welcome, everyone. I tweeted that out. I'm pretty proud of this. Let me just find this. But I got some pushback. I did. I got some pushback. And here it is. Let's see. I wanted to just express this. Very atypical. Thank you for indulging me in that self-deprecating joke. Okay, to all my Christians out there celebrating the rebirth of Jesus Christ, you're welcome.
Wow.
I think that's fair, right?
I mean, it really depends on what interpretation and all this kind of stuff. I sometimes agree with the what do you mean?
What's anti-Semitism when you do it against Christians?
Oh.
Someone's playing the reverse racism.
So are you being anti-Semitic or something like that?
No.
Is that what the indication is?
That's sad. No, I'm being anti-Christian. And then actually, I think maybe, just maybe, you know what? Maybe this is goy-splaining.
Oh, interesting.
Right? Can I play that? Lol, it's not his rebirth, silly. It's the Earth's rebirth at his resurrection from the dead. You're calling me silly after you talk about that?
You fucking goofball. It's the Earth's resurrection. You fool.
This person seems friendly. The day the stone rolled away, bringing life beyond death, and he breathed on his followers, all except Thomas.
Poor Thomas.
Life for all who follow us. You're welcome too. With hearts. Okay. And this is You're so cute and clever, Miss Katie. Bet you're a great lover. Interesting.
Hey,
conjecture.
Look at that. Wouldn't
I
that
consider Christianity to be a Jewish sect. Sure, log off.
Okay.
Now this is a weird thing. Log off with smiley
faces. Log off.
Like, is that like right? Are we friendly? Is that like
idea.
a loving log off?
Somebody's laughing. Somebody's laughing.
Ghostbusters. What's that? Okay, I like it.
Oh, they're busting him as a ghost. They're busting a
Right.
ghost. Jesus, isn't that some fun?
Yeah. I sick what you did, Thor. That's okay. I like that.
Okay,
Once to do
okay.
what to do. She means to say wake up or grow up. Not really. Racist Uncle Tearbit. Well, someone will have egg on their face. Jesus was a Jew. Right. That's why I said it.
Yes.
Anyway, but you know what? People said that they weren't, that I got it wrong. It wasn't a rebirth. It was what was it called? A
Resurrection?
resurrection. Yeah. So I'm
Right.
sorry. Okay.
It's
so
not, he was not born as a new little baby Jesus.
No,
There was
right,
not
I
a new
wish.
baby
I
that
wish.
came
That's
out.
probably what was really needed. You know, you need a fresh start. But I will say that he was okay. So it's not. He was not. He was given mouth to mouth.
He was resuscitated.
He was
Yes,
resuscitated.
he was resuscitated.
Isn't that what that means?
I just read all about this. He went up on the cross there, and he stayed until it was like there were bugs and all sorts of shit. Like he was all dried out, and bugs were coming at him and everything. And then one of his followers, I believe it was Matthew, if I'm not remembering incorrectly, went and brought him to a cave. Went and brought him to a cave, and then he was born once again.
As a full life man, though.
He was brought back fully to life. That's what they say.
And something with a rock.
It seems a little implausible to me, if you ask my
far-fetched,
opinion on
yeah.
it. It's a little far fetched. I don't
Yeah.
necessarily.
You don't co-sign.
I don't co-sign, but I think that's what they say is that he went to a cave and then he was alive once again.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I'm really glad he's back. And then
He's not back now. He was back then. He was back like 3 days after,
Oh, so he's not back yet. We have a couple more days.
We are waiting. No, we're still now waiting for the resurrection of Christ again. And I guess the rapture is kind of what we're waiting for.
Okay.
We're waiting for the end of days and the rapture.
Okay, but when he came back, what happened?
That's a big mystery. I don't know. I think he just.
But he was already.
I think he was like, don't get mad at everybody, and it's all gravy. And I died, for
Did he have a
everybody's
DNR?
sins.
Did he have a DNR? Is that why he didn't come back, maybe?
He was like, send me back.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah. What did Jesus do when he was?
But I don't understand. He came back and then he left again, or what? I'm not even being cutesy.
I think he
I
did.
Don't know.
Like,
I read. You know what? This is.
I'm
very
actually not
hostile.
being cute either. Like,
I know this is very hostile, Jorah.
Read
of
the
squad.
friggin' Bible.
Read the friggin'
I guess
Bible.
I
I have
should,
read it.
to be
You know what?
honest
It's
with
your
you.
fault. I don't know if you identify with that. Sorry about that. Sorry, that was Jesus. Jesus on the phone. Oh, I got. But I don't know if you. I read the Bible, and maybe, just maybe, if we're a bit more engrossing, I would have remembered. So don't blame me. I'm just a consumer. Ascended to heaven. Okay, so he died.
He proclaimed eternal salvation for everybody, and then he went and became one again with his Father, God.
Got it. Okay. All right.
Cool.
All right. So he became one. Okay. So he did resuscitate.
That's the idea.
That's the idea. And
Yeah.
then he went up to heaven.
That's the idea. Yeah,
Okay.
They, first Judas betrayed him, if that's what you believe, because there's a lot of different interpretations even on that particular point. And I am someone, who doesn't believe in any of this crap, but I
Are
do
you a
think
Judas apologer?
I'm a Judas apologist in the mold of Andrew Lloyd Webber and Mikhail Bulgakov. There's the idea that Judas knew and was led by God that Jesus had to be betrayed and Jesus had to be made into a martyr for, even any of this stuff to pop off. So there's also
the whole
the
thing
idea
to pop off,
for
as
it to
they
pop
say.
off, because otherwise he's just like wandering around. Listen, here's how it. Not to say that the let's just say that this metaphor doesn't work, okay?
Yeah.
But you know how Bernie was like really
I'm
exciting
here
for
for that.
everybody,
I'm here
and
for
now
that
like
metaphor,
Bernie
yeah.
is like annoying and kind of is like trying to tell people. Well, sometimes he's annoying and he's trying to tell people like Joe Biden's pretty good and we should be happy with
sometimes,
this or
yeah,
whatever.
right.
That's like what would have happened with Jesus. You know what I mean? Like eventually, if Jesus was leading a big crowd and everything like that, he would have eventually had to be like, the Pharisees are all right. Like, everybody listen to the Pharisees
Right,
on
at
this
one
one
point, yeah,
because the
right.
Pharisees, like, they have your best interest in mind.
Right,
You know what
right.
I mean? He had to go. And then everybody was like, remembered him
unless
for
he had
like.
won.
He didn't, but, that wasn't going to happen. frankly. It's like
You're
against the Roman army and all this shit.
Right. Against the DNC? Come on.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I'd take on the Roman army before the DNC, am I right?
Take on Caesar, before
I actually wrote a piece.
Democratic National Convention.
I wrote a piece comparing Bernie to Jesus Christ, which is fine for me to do because I'm not like a believer. If I were a believer, then I'd be leaning into that thing about the Messiah complex. Someone was like, "Oh, you're hiding behind your religion and making fun of other people's." I'm a godless Jew, so try again.
Yeah, I'll make fun of all of them. I'll just make fun of every religion if I. I won't make fun. I'm freaking irreverent, man. I'm freaking irreverent. I'm irreverent.
Right. But I stick to. My main focus is Christianity because that's much less problematic. I'm not going to go to other,
Yeah.
Right? Like, there's a whole, punching up, punching down, punching sideways, whatever.
Oh, that was the Borges stories. I'm sorry, I confused the Borges story with Master and Margarita, which had a whole thing about Pilate. So thank you to Fetish Magic.
You confuse Borges, as in the Argentine writer,
with Bulgakov. Because I read two things recently that were kind of reimaginings of the scripture, and I confused the Borges one with the Bulgakov Master and Margarita one.
Right. Well, they're both with
Oopsie
bees.
daisy.
They're both with bees. So
yes, they are both with bees. They're both with bees.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Speaking, by the way, another Twitter story. Very briefly, we got another one, which is that. You guys may remember friend of show, Lady Bunny. Do you remember Lady Bunny?
Sure. Yes, I think I do. Yeah.
I think actually you weren't there, but you.
But I've seen clips. I saw the clips online. Yeah.
So
I remember Lady Bunny.
I'm looking for what is her Twitter handle is. It's like not who. It's like Lady Bunny something. And there's a free Lady Bunny. There's actually a free Lady Bunny hashtag right now, which I didn't understand.
Is it Lady Bunny 77?
Yes, I think it's that. So let's get that up there. All right, so nope, that's not it. What? Does anyone have it?
Is Lady Bunny suspended right now? Is that what the free Lady Bunny is all about? Exactly. So I think it is 77, but
okay. Can you see it?
I don't think you can. That's the shame with Twitter.
That's a shame. People know Lady Bunny. I highly suggest that people watch the interview we did with her. It was a great, great, great chat. And she has been suspended from Twitter. That's not cool. So we need to free Lady Bunny. Is that the hashtag that's happening right now?
That sounds like would be the appropriate one to me.
Sounds like it would be the appropriate one, right?
Mm-hmm.
And here she is. Just want to show people so they have a visual. So I want you to and she was a big Bernie person, big Bernie bro in my Bernie bro video that I did. And here is Lady Bunny. So you got to tweet hashtag free Lady Bunny. Okay?
What did she get suspended for?
In the past, she's gotten suspended for things like not like for calling someone a leser, a friend of hers,
Okay. So it's the kind of bad faith, reporting kind of thing where it's like, yeah.
Yeah. So, let's see. So we got to just free Lady Bunny. I'm just saying free Lady Bunny.
Get out there and free Lady Bunny.
Get out there and do it. And by the way, you know why it's really not cool that this happened?
Why?
Think about it. Lady Bunny, of all days.
Oh, it's the Easter Bunny, that famous Easter Bunny that we all know.
That famous Easter Bunny, exactly. That we all know and love.
That Easter Bunny that's always coming around with the dyed eggs. Yeah. I didn't even realize it, but I had soft-boiled eggs this morning, and so that's maybe a little bit of an Easter treat. I didn't even think about it then.
Maybe it's a crime.
No, I think that I know you're supposed to have hard boils with the stupid colors on them and everything.
I was just thinking more like aren't we supposed to like chickens and chickadees? So like we're eating them. But
the Easter Bunny is always bringing around eggs. Is always bringing around hard-boiled eggs.
Yeah, you're right. Hard-boiled eggs. Yeah,
and that's what you do as a kid. Is you look around and you find a bunch of nice and sort of outdoor temperature hard-boiled eggs to eat. Right. They're colorful and they're warm, and you can eat them up. They're hidden in the yard, and you find a sort of warm egg to eat. And isn't that nice?
Isn't that lovely? Yeah.
That's what us Christians are doing, Katie.
To be fair,
that's what we Christians are doing is we're rooting around the yard for outdoor temperature eggs and just gruffling them down.
Yeah, but to be fair, have you been to a Seder ever?
I have. I've been to a Seder.
Food is not. I mean, there's some good food involved.
I like
and
that. I'll eat all that stuff. You know, I even like I like an egg. I like all of it. Give me all every different type of holiday food. I love it.
So wait, where is the Lady Bunny thing? I want to show the Lady Bunny thing. I'm on the whole Lady Bunny situation. No promises. What does that mean?
Well, I think this is somebody that's tweeting out the hashtag Free Lady Bunny.
Oh,
probably,
okay. But I thought someone already texted it to me. That's why I thought it came up. Anyway, anything else that we want to talk about before we bring on our first guest, who I'm very excited to talk about? And by the way, you're watching, of course, as you know, the Katie Halper Show, right?
Oh, wow. Here we are.
This is the Katie Halper Show. And you know what you can do? Of course, you should you should subscribe.
Yes.
And if you feel so moved by the spirit, if you know what I mean, if you are moved by the spirit, you can, of course, become Patreon supporters at patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. Again, that's patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. And I will read the tweets of, I will read the new Patreons during a break. But
so, you know what I will do is we only have 2 minutes before we're going to bring on Eugene, but I will very efficiently and effectively share a news story in those 2 minutes. How about that?
Yeah.
I think that will be, I don't know that anyone has even done something like that. But let's see here. Here is... remember last month, Pete Buttigieg, our transportation secretary, it went viral that he rides a freaking bike home from work. He takes the city bike home.
Can you make that full size so we can really see the...
There he is as well. Let's make this full size. There you go. There he is riding a bike home, and, isn't that something special? He's riding a bike, and he's the transportation secretary. There he is, also in his mask and his bike. But Katie, and I'm squeezing this in just 2 minutes here. There's an update to this story. That was
Twitter.
Well, I'll bring it back up here in a second. Yeah, I'm switching it up. There's an update to that story. Our intrepid and a wonderful transportation secretary was caught.
Oh no.
And what he does is he rides a car up until right about the point when he's supposed to get on the bike. He brings the bike in the car, and then his security detail follows him in the car. Here it is. Here's the actual footage of Pete Buttigieg being let out of his security detail Suburban. And he's getting on the bike right before the point where he has to bike home. He has a whole security detail. He's all ready. There's other security guys around him. And then you'll see at the end of this also that the car also follows right behind him. So it's not even better for the environment or anything like that. Let's just continue. Here's Pete Buttigieg on his famous bike rides home that were photographed and went viral last month.
Who else does this thing? Has this happened in other places? They fake. Am I having deja vu? Who else does this?
I don't know. So here he is. He's about to bike off on his bike. And there's his security detail with him. They give the thumbs up, and the car follows right behind him as he goes on his bike ride home.
That is amazing.
There it is. There's our transportation secretary.
So walk me through that again. He's actually doing which thing?
He's not biking home. He's being driven to a place where he can be seen bike riding. And then he has a security detail with him where a car drives right behind him.
Wheels. It's like intense training wheels.
And it's also you might as well be in the car if the car is going to be right behind you anyway.
Right. So he doubles it. So he is driven, and then when he gets out of the car, he's followed?
He's still followed. So, it's just so that people will photograph him and things will go viral, like those first couple posts I showed you where it's here's the transportation secretary biking home. What they don't show you is that he just got out of a big armored Suburban and is being followed by that Suburban and has a security detail with him as well.
So here is the transportation secretary biking 50 feet home.
Biking 50 feet where it's visible, and then getting back into a car, presumably.
He is driven, as you said. Maybe he is risen.
Oh wow.
Pulling it
Are you
all
saying
together.
Are you saying that Pete Buttigieg is Christ-like in
He
some
may
way?
be. Yeah, I do.
Wow.
I think maybe he is. Also, by the way, I just want to bring everyone's attention to the fact that he has his smart streets, and this is like not to be a mood changer, but it's pretty terrible that his smart streets program resulted in the death of an 11-year-old black child.
Well,
And nobody ever talks about it. And it's like he doesn't even have to have a talking point about it. That's how little people care about it. Tristan Moore is his name.
Yeah.
And no one even that name.
And that's also like the only qualification he has even to be the transportation secretary is that he oversaw this program which caused the death, and also it's just some stupid fucking neolib shit even to begin with. Like even if it hadn't caused the death, like smart streets is just some stupid shit. Like let's build. Like, can we get some trains and like maybe more buses out on the street? Yeah. We don't need fucking. The streets are smart enough. Right. You know what I mean? Yeah. We have the hand that tells us when we can go, and when we have to not go. You know, it's all good.
But like, I know I'm repeating the obvious, but can you just like let's just remember how messed up our media is. Truly. That like that was not even a story he had to respond to. Yeah. Like they did not talk about it. Yes, and then they said like he darted into the streets or something.
Yes. Yeah. Fucked up.
Yeah, it's so fucked up. Anyway, well, we got the fucked up stuff, and then we got the kind of amusing stuff on the other end. But very fucked up guy, terrible guy. His father was a Gramscian scholar, which is interesting. And speaking of scholars, I think we want to just bring in. I think it's a pretty good segue. Our first guest.
Our first scholar of the night.
Our first scholar of the night, yeah. Eugene Puryear. Welcome, Eugene. Hello, Eugene.
Happy to be here and to be bringing my scholarship, I guess, to the table.
Yes, of course, yes.
Thank you for your scholarship.
Of course.
And Eugene is with Breakthrough News.
Yes, first time you've ever gotten it right,
I know.
Katie.
How do you like that? Yeah.
I know. Well, people can check us out Thursday, too, 8 p.m. Eastern on the Freedom Side from Breakthrough News at all times.
Wow. I shouldn't say that Katie asked everyone to send a one-sentence bio before this. Should I mention?
Wait, what? I don't get it.
Because he said it's the first time you got it right that he's with Breakthrough.
To be fair, honestly, wait. I want to thank you for feeling that comfort level with me, Jack, when you can out me. But to be fair, I actually didn't check what he said.
Wow.
Let's see what he said.
Okay.
Let's see what he said.
Perfect.
Host of the Punch Out podcast at Breakthrough News. But I just want you to know I got it correct.
You did.
Without cheating. And it was because I had to, not for you, Eugene, no offense.
Oh, wow.
Monica.
Yikes.
Because it was a joke. It became a joke with me and Eugene, except every time I did it actually was that I was flustered. It wasn't a joke. But I think I got to it. You know, it's good. We're good.
We're there.
Breakthrough News. We're there. So tell us what you were doing with Breakthrough News in Haiti. What were you doing there, and how long were you there for? And
yeah, of course. Well, we were there for 8 days. We just got back in the middle half of last week. Myself and Juan from Breakthrough News. We were there in the days really leading up to the 34th anniversary of the Haitian Constitution from 1987, which there were big demonstrations there. So that was maybe the pivot point of why we were there, to see sort of this high tide moment or continued high tide movement for this big popular protest movement that's shaken the whole country since the early part of this year. We were able to see and do a lot of things. I mean, there's a lot to be said, I guess, even though it was only 8 days. We were in Port-au-Prince mainly, but we were also able to get out into some of the countryside. We were able to meet with peasants who were fighting against land grabs. Some ties to Coca-Cola there. We were able to meet with workers who are working in these sweatshops that, pretty much all export to the United States. We were obviously there in the protests. We met with women's organizations. We were able to get into some of the popular neighborhoods that, have become to some degree known around the world for, quote unquote levels of violence and things like that, and see what was really going on in the country. So yeah, by and large, we were really just there because obviously there is a big popular mass movement trying to dislodge a dictator supported by the United States, but the reporting in the West on Haiti is pretty terrible. So we wanted to be there to document not only, what people have heard about, like people are protesting, but what's really going on the ground. Why are people doing what they're doing? What are they feeling, and what's their message to people in the United States vis-a-vis the relationship of this country's foreign policy to their own predicament.
And can you tell us about this dictator?
Yes, I can. Jovenel Moïse, so-called president de facto president. Most people are calling him a dictator specifically because his term ended on February 7th, but he just declared that he was the president for one more year. And in addition to just declaring he was the president for one more year, he also said, and by the way, I'm just going to change the Constitution in June. We're going to have a quote unquote constitutional referendum vote. But to give you a sense of how much of a sham that is, the Constitution is printed in French, but most people in Haiti read Creole. So they're saying they're going to change the Constitution that people can't even read.
Wow.
And interestingly enough, it gives him more power, believe it or not. And then they will use this new fake Constitution to hold an election in September that will then entrench his power moving forward. So specifically, that is why many people are calling Jovenel a dictator. But this is a little bit more long-standing than that. I mean, he's already dissolved the Supreme Court. He had dissolved the Congress there basically last year. So he'd been just ruling by decree for a year, just doing whatever he wanted to do. And so it's sort of not just this most recent situation, but the sort of entire way he has been putting together his tenure in the past, number of months. But it also goes back a little further than that. But people are very upset essentially at this guy Jovenel, not just because he has overstayed his constitutional mandate, but because of what that represents to people, which is the idea that there is that most of the problems facing Haiti are not accidental, that he is more or less behind them, that his own policies are what's leading to the poverty, to the violence, to the total lack of social services, the just extreme neoliberal reality of Haiti. And he's also extremely corrupt, has looted billions of dollars in development aid. And so people are connecting his his unwillingness to leave power with just his broader reality of someone who is most concerned with assuring the wealth of the elites in Haiti over and above the well-being of the people, even to the point of abrogating all constitutional normalities vis-a-vis the 87 Constitution.
And obviously, Anthony Blinken, our Secretary of State, has done a lot of speaking out about Maduro and stuff like that. Has he made sort of any sort of statement or any kind of forceful statement about Jovenel as well?
He has not. And here's an interesting connection. Jovenel recognizes Juan Guaido, the fake president of Venezuela, which is something the U.S. has thanked him for. The U.S. has made they make a fair amount of statements, believe it or not, as does the OAS on this issue. But they're all kind of, they're really sleight of hand statements, because if you look at the State Department statements, they'll all open up with saying, well, we're very concerned about the situation there. It's very bad. The president needs to get it under control. But they all end with, he needs to have elections. He needs to have elections. So it's all sort of designed to give you a smoke and mirrors, as if they care about the social situation on the ground in Haiti, when in fact, what they're really trying to do is provide political cover to his attempt to have this constitutional referendum and later elections down the pike, by sort of changing the narrative to be, well, it is bad, but if he can get a hold of it, the elections can be credible. So they flatten out the entire context, and it's really designed to create really a low bar, that if there can be any perception that the security situation, quote unquote, improves in Haiti, it'll be easy for the United States and others to say, yeah, the election is good, it's all fine. So they're making statements, but they're 100% really backing Jovenel for many different reasons. But certainly it is just one of the many points that exposes U.S. foreign policy, certainly in Latin America and the Caribbean, but really around the world is well, it's certainly not about democracy.
Yeah, so what is it? What's the ulterior motive here?
Well, I don't know if it's an ulterior motive. I think it's the upfront motive. I think
democracy and freedom.
Yeah, well, I think that what it really is twofold. I mean, I think it's economic and geopolitical. The history of Haiti, the recent history of Haiti, is more or less dominated, well, not the recent history, quite some history, but let's just talk about recent history of Haiti, has been dominated by U.S. attempts to do everything possible to keep Haiti down. I mean, here's a good way to look at it. For most of the 20th century, the U.S. supported a brutal dictator, Francois Duvalier, Papa Doc, and his son, Jean-Claude, also known as Baby Doc. They're just brutal, terrible dictators in every possible way. And then the Haitian people launched an amazing struggle in the mid-1980s. They dislodge Baby Doc as a dictator. They write a new constitution. this priest from the countryside who's sort of radicalish, Jean-Bertrand Aristide, emerges, unites people, excites people in the early 1990s. First democratic elections happen. He's elected on a platform of, developing the country, reversing just the total control of the economy, being oriented towards the United States and Europe and Canada and so on and so forth. He's almost immediately cooed out of power in the early 90s by CIA-backed death squads that they had established during the Duvalier dictatorship as part of their anti-communist crusade. The U.S. then spends most of the rest of the 90s backing governments that make the country even worse than it already was, just in brutal privatizations across every single industry, the oligarchization of the country, even larger growth of the textile, sweatshop, export-oriented economy to the United States. So that's what they're doing then. Then Aristide comes back. He's able to win an election in the early 2000s. In 2004, the U.S. takes him out again, and then installs a succession of governments that are more or less totally beholden to the exact same type of economic reality, where the vast majority of so-called manufacturing in Haiti is just assembly manufacturing and sweatshops for American companies. And by the way, some of it is for the military industrial complex. A lot of it's textiles, but some of it is like small technologies and things like that, and export-oriented agriculture. So I think that's a big piece of it, is that a huge amount of wealth is extracted from Haiti by multinationals. But I think it's also geopolitical. I mean, as I mentioned, Jovenel supports Juan Guaido. I believe that is the only Caribbean nation, Haiti, that openly supports Juan Guaido. Certainly of the ones I can think of, maybe Dominican Republic, but I don't think that's actually true. CARICOM, which is the Caribbean community, most people don't know this, but Dr. Rowley, who's the Prime Minister of Trinidad, he spoke to the Atlantic Council earlier this year about what was the CARICOM priorities for the Biden administration. And their priorities were they want the U.S. to relax the embargo against Cuba, and they want them to stop the recognition of Juan Guaido. So, Haiti's position is very prominent as a Caribbean nation, backing these absurd geopolitical pieces. They support the Colombian government. They're a big supporter of Taiwan. And so they play a role ideologically as a Black Caribbean country that stands with the United States in many of their important geopolitical endeavors. And of course, given the history of the Haitian Revolution, the sort of moral authority of Haiti is actually high, not low, even though I don't think people think about it like that. And so I think it's a very prominent piece of the broader ideological campaign of the right wing. And I think that's the way to really look at the politics of Haiti in some ways, is very similar to the politics of the right in Latin America and the Caribbean more broadly, which is to assure the maintenance of the wealth for, of course, the elites in that country, but for the multinationals, and not to have Haiti move into the camp of what we're seeing, the pink tide and the resurgence of the pink tide countries inside of Latin America. So I would say that, more or less is why they're backing Jovenel.
Wow. Yeah. And we had on, the other night, we had on Oli Vargas and Camila Escalante, who
great
were talking
people.
about Bolivia.
Cauchan News.
Yeah.
Go
and
to.
there's a very big difference in the way that, Blinken is talking about the democracy, his worry about the failure of democracy or the deteriorating democracy in Bolivia, which interestingly enough now has a democratically elected government, and he wasn't very concerned when there was a coup government with that. I said crypto-fascist the other day, but it's Christo-fascist.
Yes.
Not even crypto, Christo-fascist. Like homegirl carries around a huge Bible. Kind of impressed.
Janine Áñez.
Do that, yeah. Who's now in jail, and people are upset that she's in jail. But that's like what happens when you oversee massacres and condone them and enable violence. I mean, I'm not into the car.
Not always.
No, that's what should happen. Right.
That's what should happen.
And I'm not a carceral feminist, but if there's a time, we can reinvent the wheel if you want. But that's not exactly like, I don't think that's the U.S. State Department's. That's what they should try to do. That they should be like, obviously, the carceral state is problematic. We would like to not participate in that.
As much as you're joking, don't be surprised.
I know, it's going to happen, right?
The level of rhetoric is so absurd anyway. I mean, the things they call democracy and the things they call dictatorship is so out of whack. I mean, who knows what they're going to say next?
Yeah. And can you talk about, I want to show some of the videos and photos
Sure.
that you took. I can just scroll through your timeline, but can you just talk briefly about more of the things that you learned, like things you didn't know before you went there, and also, of course, the history that you alluded to. Just can you do? I know you're not an historian, but you are a Renaissance man. Can you give us a little summary, everything you need to know about Haitian history and what we're afraid to ask in 1 minute?
Well, I don't have a doctorate, but I am proud to say I have a bachelor's of arts in history from Howard University, one of the great history departments on the planet. Shout out to HU. But just wanted to note that.
Kamala. Just kidding.
Well, she also matriculated there. We are everywhere, and we tend to be successful people.
I was actually, I was referring to the Clinton Kamala thing that happened the other day. So shout out for that. Anyway, I don't hold that against Howard. Okay, keep going.
No, I just wanted to allude to my professional training, just to be clear here.
Definitely.
But yeah, I don't know if I can do it in 1 minute, but I mean, listen, the history of Haiti is obviously, some of the signal history of the entire Western Hemisphere. The Haitian Revolution starts in 1791, is triumphant in 1804. The first true quote unquote democratic country in the Americas. I mean, obviously there was the so-called American Revolution, but given the issue of slavery, people who did not own property, women, basically anyone who is not a rich white male property owner not being able to vote. I think we really have to see the Haitian Revolution as really the crowning achievement in many ways, I would say, of that entire quote unquote Enlightenment period in terms of actually empowering the masses of people to take control of their own destiny. But because it was a brutal revolution that defeated Europe on its own ground. I mean, remember that Toussaint didn't just kick out the French. He also then defeated a British invasion. And then subsequently, Dessalines and others defeated Napoleon's 90,000 troops under Leclerc. So, I mean, it was a brutal, bloody struggle to become free over this time. And it was always held against Haiti, more or less. Well into 1947, I believe, was the last year, Haiti was still forced to pay back the so-called debt to France that it had accumulated by liberating the property of slave owners. I believe it was like $21 billion or something in today's dollars. I mean, some huge amount of money they could never pay. So it was always played a major destabilizing role in the country. Haiti has been invaded and occupied by the United States in 1915 for a number of years. And so the history of Haiti since the revolution of Haiti, really since especially the turn of the century into the 1900s, has been one of colonialism, neo-colonialism, and really up until today, that continues to be the nature of the struggle. I mean, I mentioned the coups earlier against President Aristide. I mean, that's really, what it was all about, is maintaining Haiti as a neo-colonial country, keeping Haiti down. So it's an interesting through line from the liberation of Haiti, well, shortly after the liberation of Haiti, I should say, into today, is the attempts of major powers to sort of keep Haiti down and keep it in a neo-colonial status, which makes sense because going back to 1791, it was one of the richest colonies, right? Like Haiti then and now has been the source of very great wealth, despite the poverty that many people are forced to live in. And I think in terms of being there, that is something that's very palpable. I mean, we live in capitalism, so many of these things aren't unique to Haiti necessarily. But I think, you're in a country where there's a huge problem with food insecurity, yet there is food for sale on the street all over the place, right? And then you think that a lot of the people selling the food for sort of just a subsistence living from their relatives or whatever on the farm probably couldn't even afford to. They are the ones suffering from food insecurity. So it's sort of the baffling realities of all of that. I think is a notable factor. But then there's like Porsche dealerships if you have the money, right? Something like 80% of schools are privatized in Haiti. So it's just like a total privatized schooling reality. So that's an interesting thing that you see on a very regular basis driving around in Port-au-Prince, is all the different ads basically for the schools. That are out there. But, I've lived in DC for 15 years and certainly seen the sort of partial privatization of that system. Even that does not sort of reach the level of what I saw there in Port-au-Prince. But I think it really just hits you on the head more than anything else, just the enforced nature of poverty in Haiti, how such a huge amount of wealth is being created. And it's just so obviously not being equitably shared out in any way, shape, or form. And everything there doesn't have to be the way it is, just becomes very clear when you're there. That's maybe true of a lot of places. But certainly I think that the image you get of Haiti of just sort of being uniquely impoverished or something like that, like there's some congenital problem with Haitians, I think just is so misleading. It's also racist, of course, but I mean, it's so misleading for people to understand the true reality that is happening there on the ground. But also, I will say that it also totally wipes out the very vibrant culture, feeling. I mean, it's just because there is a lot of informal sector stuff. It's a very vibrant street culture. There's a lot of pride in Haitian national history. Like, so many brands are Haitian brands, right? Like, unlike many other places in the Americas, you aren't actually inundated by American brands, which I thought was interesting. And I think there's several reasons for that. But one is, you can tell people have a lot of pride in things that are Haitian or are known to be made in Haiti, and in themselves and in their own history. And I feel like that sort of beauty of Haiti, just of its people, not to mention the physical beauty, gets totally lost in the framing of what's going on. And even the framing of things that are real, like poverty is real, violence is real. People were talking to us about those things and the impact they have on them. But the idea that there are like people with agency grasping these problems with their two hands and trying to solve them, like, that's what you don't get. I mean, the New York Times, in the week I was there, they had their, one obligatory article in the lead up to the Constitution Day demonstrations. The only Haitian they quoted was the president, Jovenel Moise.
Wow.
And the two other people they quoted were white Americans. Now, to be fair, one of those people is someone who I think is very good, but it's just the fact that they were alluding in the
Hillary
article
Clinton,
multiple times.
or Abe Lincoln.
Definitely not. Jake Johnston from
Tapper,
the
Jake
Center
Tapper.
for Economic
Okay.
and Policy Research, who is great on Haiti. But, if you're referencing 80 million times in the article that there are many Haitians who are opposed to this president, and you couldn't just find one and get him on the phone, and I'm like in Haiti at the time talking to people all over the place. I mean, it just gives you a sense of how, well, so many things. Just the fact you feel you can even report a place in that way, I think, gives you a sense of the level of disrespect and the level of misunderstanding that's happening. And even just the fact that, like, there was a million long in-depth articles about the yellow vest in France in the New York Times. And I'm all for that. It was an important moment in the history of the world, certainly in the history of France. But you don't see anything comparable with Haiti, which is, a 3-hour and 20-minute flight from New York City. I went there.
Right.
So, anyway, I'll leave that there.
Yeah. Well, speaking of leave that there, I don't know if you are equipped to answer this. If you are already giving us a lot of info, but I'll put it out there in case you know. Can Eugene please speak to how the Secretary of State Clinton and the Clinton Global Initiative effed over Haitians?
Sure, there's a lot of ways. I mean, you could pretty much sum it up by saying they didn't do anything while saying that they did. I mean, I think we can all remember the earthquake in 2010 from like the late night commercials to collect money, you know what I mean? And all the money people were raising for Haiti. What I will tell you right now is, I'm sorry if you donated, because there's almost no evidence that the billions and billions of dollars. I mean, it's one of the saddest things, really, that you could say about Haiti, is that most people in America associate Haiti with charities, and there's very little evidence that most of that money is doing anything at all. But yeah, in the wake of the earthquake, for instance, Hillary Clinton, who is the Secretary of State, was overseeing the $4.4 billion appropriated by the U.S. Congress for Haiti. What that did in a positive sense, I can't say, but I can say that a lot of it was used to expand Caracol, one of the industrial parks, and that was one of the main economic moves the U.S. was pushing on Haiti in the wake of the earthquake, was to expand the sweatshop economy. I'll say that again. The U.S. was pushing Haiti to expand the sweatshop economy, building larger industrial parks for larger and larger sweatshop-based factories, and expanding from just textiles into many other things. Again, one of the things is notable about this is that they were also pushing to keep the minimum wage at $3 a day, to make sure the minimum wage could not rise above $3 a day, because they thought that that would destroy their sweatshop economies. They didn't want that. And you can see, the history and the connections. The biggest individual capitalist in this manufacturing export economy is a guy named Andy Apade. He's one of the wealthiest Haitians. He's also a U.S. citizen, believe it or not. And you can see how his company has expanded from textiles into, they're making PPE during the pandemic. They're also making electronic parts for U.S. military contractors and other now electronics companies of different sorts that are going to Haiti to take advantage of something called the HOPE Act, which is a congressional act that was passed that allows tariff-free access to the United States from certain goods, light industrial goods, from Haiti. And the way it works is it incentivizes sweatshops, right? Because you have a lot of money and you live in some other country. But if you set up a factory in Haiti, or really the way it tends to work, if you contract out with someone in Haiti who owns a factory, then you can have the thing stamp made in Haiti. You can get it into the United States without tariffs, i.e. taxes, and then you can sell it for a greater profit. So this was really what was going on. And I'll add on top of that, President Bill Clinton, former President Bill Clinton of the CGI, became a very close advisor of Michel Martelly, who is the head of the PHTK government, which is the government of Jovenel, right? So the dictatorial government. And Martelly was sort of widely hailed in the international community. That's why he could have as a close advisor Bill Clinton, as someone who's going to turn around Haiti. He said early in his tenure that he thought Haiti needed a Fujimori solution, in reference to Alberto Fujimori, the ruthless dictator of Peru, who sterilized 250,000 indigenous women amongst the tens of thousands of people who were brutally massacred. So that's the mentality of the PHTK. This is the type of government that Clinton was trying to install. But it wasn't just Clinton. Sean Penn also implicated in this. In his many of his so-called charitable efforts, he has been linked several times with the PHTK party, with Jovenel, and with Mr. Martelly. And, they are very good at PR, and they have pushed their sort of government as some sort of solution for Haiti. But it's worth noting, that's why I mentioned the Fujimori solution. The PHTK party, the support that it has gotten from Bill Clinton, the support that it has been able to get from the United States, is what the U.S. really wants in Haiti. They want something just like Francois Duvalier, just like Jean-Claude Duvalier in the Duvalier dictatorship period, people who are going to use brutal force to keep down any opposition, to make sure that nothing in the country changes in terms of the economic and geopolitical setup. They couldn't get that with democracy. No matter how hard they tried, the Haitian people have continued to rise and continued to use democratic openings to try to improve their own lives. So now they're just moving much more openly into the camp of a dictator like Jovenel, because that's ultimately the easiest way for them to do what they want to do. And the Clintons are 100% complicit in that, past, present, and future.
This is the Caracol Industrial Park that you mentioned. Here they are.
Yes, I was in Sonapi, which is not that far from there. It's another industrial park, and I met with these workers there, these unionized workers, and it was the first time they had a meeting like in the industrial park in some time. Because even though the right to organize is technically legal in Haiti, they were telling us how they would be arrested if they had a meeting like that and we weren't there. They were like, because you're there and you're from the U.S., they're not going to do anything, but.
So like a human shield.
I mean, essentially, yes. And, there's all sorts of thugs and people like that who are certainly watching the meeting. So it gives you a sense of the nature of these things. People are working in these industrial parks. There's no overtime in them at all. So there's people working 10, 11, 12-hour days, no overtime. The health situation is abysmal. As many people pointed out to us, there's no right to housing. Well, there is a right to housing actually in the Constitution, but there's no right to housing in reality. So workers were telling us that, it's very difficult because you don't have a good place to live. There's no public transportation at all in Haiti. There's almost no public services in Haiti, which tells you something else about Jovenel. But so people pay a huge sum of their money out of their pocket to travel to these industrial parks, which are on the outskirts. They're not like close to where people live necessarily. And then on top of that, people were talking about the issue of the schools. I raised the issue of the 88% of schools are privatized. Several people and these workers were saying to us, yes, this is a big problem for us too. So not just connecting the conditions inside the industrial parks, but how those conditions are really directly linked to the broader realities that they face in Haiti as people who are just under the gun in so many different ways.
Yeah, so I just thought we could quickly look at some of the videos that you shot of
Sure.
the protests. Any in particular you want? I mean, I have a bunch of them.
Any ones you want to show, and we've got a lot more footage that we're continuing to look through and package. So people this week at BT Newsroom, across all your social media platforms, we're going to be releasing more videos.
Okay, awesome. Let me just show this. And that is in his, also Eugene put that in his, whatchamacallit?
Yes.
Chiron thing, which is great.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, here's some of the protests. Could you hear that?
You can hear it, but it wasn't. It was very, very hot. Just so people know, people are chanting, Jovenel is finished, is what they're chanting now.
Here's another. And did you have a translator with you, or how did you?
Yeah, we did have a translator there. That guy was saying a number of things, but one is that Haiti's not for sale.
Yeah. Yeah. So really great stuff. Make sure that you check it out. It reminds me a little bit of like some of the painting reminds me a little of like Venezuela.
It's similar to Venezuela in the fact that there's a lot of street art on everywhere. I mean, I would definitely say that. At least it's similar to Caracas in the sense that there's a lot of street art everywhere for sure. Definitely.
Yeah, awesome. And I have more questions for you. I'm sure people in the chat have more questions for you. And this is what you find, by the way, if you put in the search "Free Haiti" #Free Haiti and Eugene's Twitter
handle.
Twitter handle. What's this? What's this smoke?
That's burning tires. There's burning tires all over the place in the protest. This is on Sunday. You can't even really fully see it because the smoke is obscuring it, but it's a lot of people coming in to this part of Port-au-Prince. It's known as the Crossroads of Resistance, which is usually where all the protests sort of converge upon one another. But yeah, it's people typically. This is also from Sunday, from a little earlier there in the march. No, it's from Monday. I'm sorry. And this guy is saying, "Down with U.S. imperialism, down with the U.S., down with Joe Biden imperialist, down with Joe Biden imperialist," which was pretty ubiquitous, to be honest with you, the whole time we were there. Wow. I mean, people are very aware of what's happening. I mean, I think most people there feel very strongly, and I don't think that they're wrong about this, that the only thing that really keeps Jovenel in power is that he does have the support of the United States, and that's a really important card to have. So, yeah, I would say, so on the issue of the burning tires, yeah, the protests are designed to pretty much shut things down. So there are a lot of burning tires and roadblocks and things that are set up, and people definitely will burn American flags on there as well. And there's a lot of that sentiment.
Did you have one of those? Did you not use the #Free Haiti with that one?
Maybe we did. It might be on the Breakthrough News one. I'm not 100% sure if we got it 100%. Right. But yeah, I mean, it was that. I think that particular one was when the cops came through in the very beginning of a demonstration, flying this U.S. flag and out the window to taunt people. And people grabbed the flag, and then they ultimately burned it. But, I saw a guy with a U.S. flag tied around his ankle so that as he walked, he would step on it throughout the entire route. And, yeah, I mean, when I asked people all over the place pretty much what was the thing they wanted us to emphasize the most to people in the U.S., and pretty unequivocally, every single person said that people in the United States should do something about the U.S. government backing Jovenel. So it's a big theme in the protests. It's a big theme in just the broader reality of what's happening in Haiti, is that people are very angry with the United States. They're very angry with Canada. They're very angry with the OAS and these other institutions, because they feel that they really would be having much more success if it wasn't for they would be having much more success if it wasn't for the U.S. backing of Jovenel. So, yeah, you hear a lot of that. And I would say it's not really like anti-American hostility or something like that, as like Republicans would say. I would actually say that people are in many ways, very knowledgeable of the fact that people in the U.S. are also not complicit with the government, but they do want to see people do something. But they have a belief that there are people in the U.S. that will and can do something if they so choose.
I don't think anyone in my audience is going to be offended that they burned an American flag.
No, I don't think so.
Maybe that they didn't burn it with enough gasoline or something.
Well, that's certainly...
Maybe, I mean, except for me, and I'm actually triggered, and I don't know why you didn't intervene. I think you should have put yourself between the protesters and the flag. People have, and just said these colors don't bleed. That's like that's what a patriot does.
Well, apparently they don't bleed, but they do burn. But yeah, no, that definitely the issue of the role of the United States was front and center the whole time I was there. No doubt about that.
Yeah. Well, and anything else that was surprising? Oh, I know what I want to ask you about the difference, if there is any, between Trump and Biden and Clinton when it comes to this foreign policy.
Little to no difference at all, really. I mean, I would say Haitian foreign policy going back to Reagan really has been pretty 100% consistent across all of the different presidents. I mean, in a way, you could actually say that Trump was less involved in Haiti. I definitely would say like Clinton probably is much more implicated on Haiti than any other recent president. He was very active in the 90s in a very bad way, a number of different ways. Then, of course, again, after the earthquake. And Bush, the second Bush, George W. Bush, was also very, very negatively involved in Haiti. So I would say the Clinton and the Bush administration, second Bush administrations, maybe the most implicated. But the first Bush administration, of course, the Haitian refugee crisis, trying to blame AIDS on Haitians, certainly under Clinton, similar sort of pieces there. There was obviously the controversy in the 90s over the differing immigration policies for Haitians versus Cubans, the wet foot, dry foot policy that obviously is designed to destroy the Cuban Revolution, while Haitians were being turned around en masse no matter what in the 90s. So, but I think Obama, just as bad, Trump, just as bad. So Biden is really just continuing what has been an extremely bipartisan policy really towards Haiti from a U.S. perspective for some time.
Right. And I mean, I've shown this. I showed this a couple of episodes ago, but I do want to show this again because I just think it's so great. And I mean, when I saw this, I thought it was like a meme. I thought it was fake. 1 second, please. Jack, you have any questions while I look this up?
I asked about Blinken.
Did you ask about about what's the band? Lincoln Park.
Lincoln Park. No, I didn't ask about Lincoln Park. No, this is all. I mean, I thought it was fascinating that they're chanting about Biden over there, which I guess just speaks to like how completely overpowering America is over
so nice.
Like all
That's
their
why
interests.
He's
Yes, he's such a nice guy, as he says.
Yeah, no, I mean it's interesting thing. I mean, one guy said to me out in the rural areas, he was like, I mean, I don't know what's going on with Biden. I thought he was supposed to be a Democrat.
Yeah, well,
sort of taking Democrat as small d.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I'm just looking for. Damn, it's so good. Hold on 1 second. Haiti. I mean, the thing is, like, he didn't call it a shithole country, which gives you a lot.
He's not saying cuss words anymore. That is the thing, is that Biden is no longer saying cuss words about these countries, and so that is a little bit different.
Yeah, it's different. It's like, it makes me cry.
He's making sure that he doesn't draw any attention to his actual policies by saying something
with Syria, he was so
offensive about it.
Right, like he was so discreet about it with Syria. So here's something I could not believe was real.
Yeah.
And it's from the U.S. Embassy in Haiti, and it says in Creole, right? They I can say quite clearly, don't come over.
Yeah.
Which is like, I don't know. It's just, there's something about it.
He knows to write in Creole anyway, even if the Constitution is not.
Yeah, exactly. Right,
yeah, I mean, it's an interesting. I was there when this came out. I mean,
how did people react?
Yeah.
Well, one, I think a lot of people were not surprised. I mean, the U.S. Embassy in Haiti is really just a font of disinformation on a regular basis. So I don't think people were surprised. I think that a number of statements that are frequently made by the U.S. Embassy are very poor, very misleading. For instance, they're quick to denounce anything that they consider to be violent unless it's tied to Jovenel, then they have nothing to say. But yeah, I think I have a question of who this was really for. I mean, the meme is certainly in Creole, but why did they feel the need, the U.S. Embassy in Haiti, to translate it into English, right? Like, I think, which in Haiti, no one is going to need it to be translated into English. So to me, they wanted to make sure that people who speak English, i.e. Americans, knew exactly what this meant. And I interpreted it, and certainly this is what I still believe, as really being a message to the United States. Like, oh, Joe Biden isn't soft on these immigrants coming from Haiti. And here you can see that he's like, he even put out a slick looking meme in Creole to speak directly to those Haitians and wag his finger and look really tough, just like he's deported hundreds of Haitians since the beginning of this year from this country. And I think just like many presidents in the past, he is using Haitian immigrants as a punching bag for his own bona fides. But I think we have to just go back to what Vice President Harris said when she was named the czar or whatever of the issue in the southern border. And by the way, one of the top countries that people are coming from at the southern border is Haiti. They don't tell you that, but it's something that people should know. But she said, let's go to the root cause issues. Well, the Biden administration is the root cause issue in Haiti. And I think this is all designed to take the eye off the ball on that issue, quite frankly. And just like they do with the migrant caravans, and they use that as an ideological device to take the eye off the ball, that it's the U.S. supporting people like Joe in Honduras and the former president of Guatemala, Jimmy Morales, and these right-wing fools, and Jovenel, that's actually driving people to come to the southern border in the first place.
Wow. Well, yeah, let's see. Any questions before we bring in our next guest, who I'm very excited to be talking to, and also I definitely want next guest coming in. Let me know if there are any particular pieces of ART. I was looking at your timeline. I forgot to ask you for that. Quickly, I'm just gonna I'll give you some time to find those, and. Just wanted to, let's see. I think Eugene, I'll give you the donation from this. I crowdsourced enough, I think.
Well, thank you.
Someone wanted to know. We'll wait to hear the question, then you can thank me. A long story short, asks K. Halper. After Haiti won independence, they invaded and occupied the DR for decades. They kept the slaves that were there working until DR independence. I don't know if that's if he's requesting a comment. Just saying that. Telling me.
Well, I mean, that's a much deeper issue there. The issue of why the Haiti and the Dominican Republic are two separate countries, which is rooted, of course, in European colonialism. I would argue a little bit about the description of that as an invasion, but I don't know if we have time here to really get into the history of Haiti and the Dominican Republic. But I will also know that the Dominican Republic is building a wall on the border, just like Trump with Haiti right now, and sending the military there. So I don't know if the DR can take the moral high ground, not to mention that it has been one of the centers of racism, the government of the DR in the Caribbean for years and years and years. And in fact, the Trujillo government and others, the impact of colorism and sort of the broader politics of the DR has been absolutely detrimental, of course, to the Black population there. So I don't know if there's a moral high ground to be held in the DR versus Haiti, but I guess that's what this commenter is looking to get in there and say.
I think he also just said, like, they had slaves themselves, they were imperialists. I don't know maybe just trying to be a little contrarian.
Yeah,
but
the country that actually freed the slaves of Latin America by helping Simón Bolívar go back to Venezuela and Colombia under the pretext that they freed the slaves, only to be left out, by the way, Haiti, of the Colombian conference held by Bolívar because of the United States pressuring them because they did not want a free Black country to be a part of the broader political peace.
Also, I remember when I was teaching history, I had a student write about this for this historiography project that they did in high school.
Nice.
And it's awful. It's like they would have, I guess the Dominican Republic would have people, because it's like this artificial, border, right? So there are a lot of people who look like you don't know if someone's Dominican or Haitian. Right. Although obviously there's more African presence in Haiti than in the DR, but obviously there's a lot of overlap. Anyway, so they would ask people to say the word parsley in Spanish because it as like to see if they had an accent, and then they would, depending on whether they had one, they would like let you in or attack you.
Yeah, it's a long history. It's a sad history. Really, the division of the island, the imposition of, on both sides of the border, brutal anti-communist governments. It's unfortunate. It's a shared history, which should be more recognized than it is. But there's a lot of geopolitics historically going back to the 1800s about why there's a divide between Haiti and the DR. But I will say there are many people in the DR who are absolutely opposed to racism against Haitians. So it's not universal by any means.
Right. Okay, so let's see. One other question, and then we'll. How is Sean? This is from Bill Cole. How is Sean Penn's Haiti-focused charity corps supporting authoritarian government in Haiti? Does Hollywood know this?
I suspect Hollywood doesn't know.
They do
I think
now.
most
They're
celebrity
watching.
activism is sort of built on Hollywood knowing very little about what's really going on. We saw the same thing with Save Darfur. Yeah, I mean, Sean Penn has been his charity has been very vetted and supported by Jovenel and by Martelly. There's a lot of pictures of them hanging out together, them being involved in his fundraisers and so on and so forth. I think it's very unfortunate. But to be honest with you, I'm not here to just randomly rag on Sean Penn. I mean, it's the vast majority of efforts that are involved in this sort of area of NGO provision to Haiti tend to be in bed with a number of unsavory characters in the government. And, the government really heavily promotes this. Like they gave some part of an island to Kanye, last year in order to develop what Kanye says is going to be the future, the city of the future or whatever. It's all just designed to create an image in the United States that they are, forward-looking, forward-thinking, that they're doing important things, that they're all about development, and they use these celebrities to cover for them. But yeah, I would say, unfortunately, many celebrity political efforts, it is, they're woefully underinformed. And I think when it comes to countries in Africa, when it comes to Haiti, you see this thing more often than not, that the involvement of a lot of these American celebrities tends to be at the most superficial level and usually directly connected to these oligarchical governments that have a lot of money and they can hire people that know how to talk to celebrities. And well, whatever, I won't go on a whole long thing, but it's obviously the biggest problem in Haiti is that this NGOization of aid to Haiti has replaced any discussion on the role of U.S. foreign policy, on why people even need to send aid to Haiti in the first place. There shouldn't be any lack of food, jobs, or anything like that in Haiti. There should be electricity, running water for all people. All those things should easily be there, but they're not. And by creating this sort of charity-based mentality, as the famous saying goes of liberation theology, if I feed the poor, if I feed the hungry, they call me a saint. But if I ask why the poor are hungry, they call me a communist. I mean, that's the reality of Haiti, really.
When you could be both.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Sean Penn and the celebrities in Hollywood don't care about much else than going to parties and feeling good about themselves for donating, and looking at pictures that look sad, and then they're like, I can give some money here and see Katy Perry perform, and so that would be pretty cool.
By the way, I have to correct the record. So I found this apparently. The Peregrine Massacre, it was called that, but apparently it's not clear whether that's a myth. So I'm reading something that, let's see. So the 1937 massacre is widely referred to as the Parsley Massacre because some soldiers allegedly carried a sprig of the herb with them on their killing spree. The Spanish word for parsley, perejil, is nearly impossible for native Creole speakers to pronounce correctly because of their pronunciation of the letter R, which can sound more like a It came out sounding something like Farahid. Upon hearing the mispronunciation, soldiers and civilians who had been paid to kill assumed the speaker was Haitian and killed them, or so the story goes. But then, according to Lauren Derby, a historian at UCLA, who interviewed some survivors and written widely about the massacre, it's a myth. No survivors or people who witnessed the massacre have said anything about parsley being used. Okay, so I had to correct that. But it's still an example of the fact that that would be a plausible story.
Right. It tells you everything you need to know. Yeah, that there have been many massacres. There's been many mistreatments. There have been many attempts to, make it very difficult for all the people of the island of Hispaniola to thrive to the degree that they should be.
Right. All right. So let's bring in our next guest. All right. Coming to us live from Queens, New York.
Thanks for clarifying that.
Okay, Fox. Hello.
I guess there are other Queenses in places. Hi.
Hi, welcome.
Sound all right?
Yeah, sounds great.
Thanks for having
Welcome.
me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. And
Good to see you, okay?
Good to see you, Jack.
Okay, as someone who is the person who saw Jack and Kate,
I
I guess, right?
That's
I
true.
saw
This is
Jack
true.
on the street. I was in Wafa's, which is a legendary Palestinian restaurant that was originally in Forest Hills, Queens, and moved to Williamsburg. And I saw Jack and Kate out the window. So funny.
It was Brooklyn, thank God. I was
Brooklyn.
so worried I would be wrong
No, you're
about
right.
that. Good.
Yeah, and I had to do the whole celebs sighting shtick.
Right.
To them.
What a treat! What a treat to experience. Honestly, what a lot of fun.
That was so funny. I couldn't.
Yeah. It's-
Yeah, it all makes sense. Like it feels like we're in similar circles in opposite coasts. Type
Yes,
of
it's
thing.
true. It's true. And I do a show so early in the morning that it is more appealing to people, I think, on the East Coast. So it makes a lot of sense that you would have ended up watching that show.
I mean,
Yeah.
I was a fan of Struggle Session too, and that's kind of where I first
The entree, sure.
got in. I mean, that was like my whole foray into podcasting was like I like that there is a lefty perspective for pop
Right.
culture, like you guys do. Like sometimes you want to turn your brain off, but not all the way off. I'm
Like
not gonna
20% brain function or
'cause
something like that.
I used to do a lot of like kind of art it's called art handling. It's this whole industry of moving art around, or like I did it for Artform magazine for like 4 years or something like that, and they have like this gigantic phone book size magazine that's just full of advertisements for all the galleries, and my job was just to like pack them and like organize them for shipping. And so there's a lot of just like listening to podcasts all
Oh,
day,
sure. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
doing like logistics and shipping. Very easy job, but it's just like
Yeah.
basically like the labor job that nobody in the like white collar office wants to do.
Sure.
So they just have like illegal 1099 contracted labor, which is like all of the art world. So
Sure.
that was like kind of like listening to a bunch of shows. Like at one point my brain's like I would like listen to Brian Lair every morning. I was listening to a lot of like
Oh
just
my
like
God.
whatever
This
the
is a safe
fuck.
space, so you can say Brian Lair.
I was just listening to like whatever the fuck NPR garbage, and then like something flipped in my brain where I'm like, this is rotting my brain, and I want to like read like maybe I should be listening to more like theory audiobooks, the shit that I'm like actually interested in. But then I feel like stuff started emerging that was like more like lefty podcasts.
Yeah.
That was very, very helpful.
Yeah,
Well,
so-
Street Fight too. Street Fight, I think.
Oh, Street Fight rocks.
that
Yeah.
one on too, yeah. So, but tell me, I actually funny story how I met OK. I keep wanting to say OK Cupid. How I met OK.
Brand,
Yeah.
We're all brands. We're all little brands.
That's true.
Yeah.
It's true.
All of us.
Well, we did. That's funny because we did meet online.
That's true.
That's true. Yeah.
We went on Grindr actually.
Yeah.
Both,
Grinder. Is Grinder around? Is that a thing still?
There's like 1,000 of them. I have no idea. I'm not married, so.
Well, do you have any questions or for Eugene, by the way?
Actually, yeah. So something that it feels like it's unrelated, like art and international politics, but it's actually like incredibly intertwined because the art world travels constantly, and there's all of these like international art fairs that like are a wing of like kind of soft power or imperial. It's like soft imperialism sometimes. In that sense. And I remember going to this conference called Common Field, which is like funded by like the Andy Warhol Foundation or something like that. But it's actually all right. Like they mix a lot of like liberal activist trash with more like radical activism and kind of like do a conference around that. And I remember it took place in the Little Haitian Cultural Center in Florida. And a lot of the conversations were about gentrification, and in particular in Little Haiti, like it was getting rebranded as like the design district and like becoming this like arts district. And so people were interested in like how to push back with that sort of stuff, because it's like, there's all of these ways that like art and gentrification like go hand in hand, and like there are much larger forces at work going on. And yeah, I guess I was just wondering, like, if you come across any of like that sort of thing. I know it's kind of related to um when I don't know, like it's like getting an embassy or something, or like getting an art
Mhm.
fair like
Mhm.
in Haiti or something like that.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very good point, and the intersections are so real because like Haitian art is such a big export, and so for so many of the regimes in Haiti, that becomes such a big part of their sort of public facing. Attempt. I mean, the other side is also true that many Haitian intellectuals, artists, writers have also been very critical, but certainly like the use of Haitian art as a form of soft power is big. And these foundations and other people, they often really focus in on that. Like, we're going to lift up these local Haitian artists, and of which there are many. Like when you travel around Haiti, there's all sorts of people selling their art on the street. But then, of course, that becomes captured by sort of like the higher level gallery culture, which, I think there are probably many countries of which that is the case.
Yes.
But yes, that is a factor that you see. And really a lot of like the engagement with Haiti is very sort of, it can be, well, it's like medically focused on like people who come and do different things around, providing some form of healthcare, and then like arts focused, where it's like we're going to come and find some way to empower local entrepreneurs for their woodworking, for their painted art, or for whatever it may be. And I definitely think that Jovenel's government, for sure, similar to the Duvalier regime, plays on that very heavily. And that's how they attract people like Champagne and other people like that, is they have a very sort of well-calibrated understanding of like that kind of Western, just like the role that art can play. I mean, certainly from a gentrification perspective, we all know that. I think somewhat unfortunate meme about like quote unquote artist lofts. I don't think what's happening is really what people portray it as, but just the role that art is often used to be a medium between sort of the world of big capital and the world of average everyday people, and to push their agenda, I think is always a big piece of how they operate and what they operate and how they present this face that is often very palatable, especially to creatives in the United States. President Wade of Senegal, which is a different country but similar problems, was the same way and used a lot of that kind of surface level stuff of traditional African culture. It's not surface level, but sort of the surface level understanding of it to be a big PR front. And I think the same is very true in Haiti.
Yeah, PR, yeah, I think is kind of where I was getting at, because it's part of that like sort of like charity industrial complex that you speak of, but it's also like people need to be aware of how like these things are weaponized for PR.
Mm-hmm.
I will just say quickly, I see that there's a question in the chat about the term of the president, which I do. This is the real controversy. This person is saying, so Jovenel is saying that his term began in February 7th of 2017, and that's why he has another year. But in fact, so there was a botched election in 2015 where they tried to have this election. It was totally fraudulent. It was so bad, almost nobody involved could really claim it was legitimate. And so then there was a transitional government, and then Jovenel was able to come in 2016. So even though he came in slightly before, like he came in before his actual term was supposed to have started, because of the rules around transitional governments, it means that that time actually does count against him. But he's saying, well, none of that time should count against me, and I only technically came in 2017. So he's claiming that he's doing it under the guise of what's really constitutional. But on the same token, when the Supreme Court ruled that it was not constitutional and that his term did in fact start in 2016 and that it was over, he then just imprisoned the main Supreme Court justice who wrote that opinion and said that they were trying to lead a coup against him. That person was released the Friday before that Sunday. But it is that is sort of the point he's making, is to create this sort of smoke screen around it. But it is true that every legal expert and the courts have ruled that the clock did not actually start when he claims it did. It was February 7, 2017, but the year before, in fact, when the transitional government became a reality.
Awesome. And okay, can you talk about your podcast and why you got started on your podcast? And I can tell the backstory of how I found your podcast.
Yeah. So I do a podcast called Art and Labor. I started it with my friend Lucia Love, who is like a really amazing like fine art oil painter, but also has worked a lot of like insane, dumbass odd jobs, like I'm kind of describing. And yeah, we've since expanded and added like 2 more hosts, my pals Darcy Wilder and Sarah Crow. Um, and I wanted to start it after my experience at Artform magazine, which was nuts. Basically, like towards the end of my time there was right when Me Too was first happening, and the main like the face, kind of the face of the magazine. There was like 4 different publishers, but like the like the, one of the publishers was outed as like a huge sex creep
Wow.
towards like multiple people, and then including somebody who like used to have my same job. And
Wow.
and yeah, I'd like just gotten like promoted. It was so fucking stupid. Like, because I was doing just like part-time illegal 1099 shit. And then I got promoted, and it was like I was making less and it was worse. And it's just like, this sucks.
Wow. A promotion right into like a controversial time and making less money. That's wonderful. Isn't that great?
Yeah. And they were hiding this lawsuit from like everybody from this former employee, and it like blew up into this whole thing, and they like totally botched the handling of it. It was like honestly hilarious because like it was like, yeah, right during like the big like Weinstein Me Too stuff, and we were just like every day waiting for the shoe to drop. And when it did, they like like this is all like documented in like the art press, but also in the New York Times. There was like a huge expose about it. But yeah, it was all documented in the art press that like they totally botched the handling of it because they wanted to. They were like, we don't believe the allegations and we want to stand by him, which was like the complete opposite of like the you know, the way the public was talking about it.
The zeitgeist. Yeah, this was before, you know, Me Too died. Me Too was killed last year.
It was before
it was very different.
The Democrats decided to run Tara Reid's abuser as
yes, this is right. Yeah,
guy.
Yeah,
and just abandoned that as a project. But
well, I have
anyway, I'm sort of like a believer in like the kind of Jane McAlevy's, like, you know, there was a moment where we could have like tied this shit to either larger labor issues, and I was like, when I was there, I was very like kind of inspired by that, but there was like kind of no resources of like, well, what do we do? Like a lot of us like wanted to unionize and just like couldn't. Maybe like people like had different like visa statuses, or like people like just like it's just such a strange like divide.
And I bet you have a lot of 1099 employees too, so it's like, are they even really in the union or what? Like, I feel like a lot of these, you know, like entertainment does it too. They like really atomize, you know, between the sort of independent contractors and like the actual employees, and so it's like, how do you even form a union? Like, who's in the union? Like, you have no idea when you're working at these kind of places.
Right. Yeah. And that's like the thing. Like, I was like cold emailing like random places. Like, I can't remember at the time. At the time, it was like maybe News Guild, and it was like working with Gawker or something. And I was like, maybe them or something. And then my coworker was emailing with UAW, because there's a very interesting like art history with UAW. Actually, the MoMA is unionized with UAW since the 60s. And that for those who don't know, it's the United Auto Workers. And so it's kind of weird.
Interesting, yeah.
But there is this like history of,
it'd be a cool union to be in anyway, just for like, as far as like meetings to go to, that would be a cool union.
I wish it was run more like that. Like, it's kind of exciting, like that there's like all of these weird little like potentials to like where this type of workplace could hook up. And there's like some people who like kind of have more of a like guild approach to like art handlers or like something like that. It's like, it's weird, like art handlers who like often do the same job as like certain types of like construction workers or logistics people who are unionized make like a third or half of what they make and have no benefits, you know. But it's like, just because it's for an art institution, which is like complete bullshit. So there's like been this wave of like unionization that's going around in the art world. I mean, I get long story short with my story is that, yeah, nothing really happened. A bunch of us were just sort of like pushed to quit. If you look up like the masthead at the time, like a large chunk of the people who were there just left, and
wow,
like shows, and you know they kind of do this sort, like they have this like sort of like pandering turn where they're like, because the editor-in-chief resigned over the mishandling, actually, which was pretty cool of her, and but then they replaced her with like a gay man, and they were kind of doing like the identity politics of like at like his editorial like after that was all like focusing on marginalized voices, and meanwhile they're like mistreating like trans employees and like fucking you know are extremely white like
sure
like room, I guess, if you want to even call it that. It's just art news, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Or like editorial like team, like it's very strange like type of shit that you see in the art world of like pandering, like just like complete like pandering. Like I don't like to say virtue signaling because that's like
such a right-wing word.
It's tough because sometimes there are terms that the right wing comes up with. Soy face is another one where you're like, this is a useful way to describe a certain thing that they have gone way too far with, and it's usually not even as bad as they say it is. But yeah, occasionally you're like, man, I wish I could use that one.
Yeah, but we could say pandering or tokenism. Like I like that it also like applies here, and this is like because I don't want the right to think that they invented this type of critique. That's kind of like my whole thing in general is like there's always been like really good left critique of like fucking everything. So like
I haven't seen the great left critique of soy face, sadly, but you know I don't know that we necessarily need it, but you know I will say I haven't seen it.
Yeah, we can make. That's what's fun is now you're in a new field, you can make it up.
Oh, Katie, I think you're muted or something. Something's off with your audio. Can't hear you.
Yeah, you're gone.
Oh no.
Jack, you have to take over.
You might have to. Well, Katie's ducking. Katie's ducking out. We can't hear you, Katie. You might have to like restart, like rejoin the thing or something like that.
No, we can't hear you now. I can see that you're saying, "Can you hear me now?" But
and can you hear me? But no, we cannot hear you.
This is like a cell phone commercial.
Okay,
1 second,
yes,
we got it.
We
Thank
hear
you.
you.
Got that.
Well, how's everybody doing?
I was just reflecting on
how do you have to go to Haiti? Do you fly direct or
you can fly direct from several places? You can fly direct from JFK. You can fly direct from Fort Lauderdale. It's not that far. It's about it's between about 3 hours and 20 minutes and 3 hours and 40 minutes getting there. So, you know, it's like longer to take a bus, for example, from DC from New York. But I would say it's pretty straightforward. In that sense,
our buses are so bad.
Yes, that's also true. That is also true. So yeah, it's pretty straightforward getting there. I mean, obviously, the largest Haitian diaspora in the world is in the United States. So, and primarily concentrated in Florida and in New York City. So definitely, there's most of the flights back and forth are people going one way or another vis-a-vis their family. But yeah, it was pretty easy, all things considered.
Am I back?
Oh, there you are.
We hear you. We hear you.
Look at that.
I was muted.
There we go.
Well, by the way, I just wanted I want to return to this convo, but I also wanted to play a video that I forgot to play, if that's okay, from earlier, because we're talking about regime change and foreign policy. And friend of show Margaret Kimberly, by the way, you guys should all follow Margaret
great.
if you don't. She's amazing. She posted this tweet that says, "So the U.S. has chosen to." Wait, sorry. So
we have a new
US,
Assad now.
Yeah, we have a new Assad.
Great.
Where did she say that? Where is it? So the U.S. has chosen
its new Assad.
Is that what she said?
I think it was.
I'm
And
trying to
PBS,
find the...
PBS is backing.
Oh
Yeah.
yes, the guy
Yes.
from Al Qaeda.
Yes.
Yeah. Hold on one second.
Yeah.
Let's see.
I mean, to even say that is
I mean, it's
amazing.
like-
It is
yeah.
truly
Yeah.
funny
So
that
the
we're
U.S.
like,
has chosen their Assad replacement, and PBS
Yes.
is helping them. So I just want to really quickly play this. Jack, can you play it on your end? I'm going to give it to you. I'm going
can
to
you send me the link? Yeah,
Yep,
I
of
will
course, yeah.
do that. Just
And then you
one
can
second
administer it.
here.
Make sure you press the share audio thing.
I shall. I would never forget that.
And then you can just do the full screen, so it just shows the video.
Here.
You know what I'm saying?
Jack's earning a producer credit.
I know.
I was gonna
Just a
say, I
moment.
like how I like how you're not afraid to produce on air, Katie.
I mean, do I have any other chance?
If
Sorry.
this
Playing
if this was
playing
if
an
this was that
advertisement for
HBO
Ken
show, we
Burns
would
right
do
now,
that.
so we're gonna wait just a second.
Well, thank God for that. Let's wait on that one.
Yeah.
I mean, baseball was okay.
About soft imperialism. Ken
Yeah.
Burns.
Did you get it,
Unbelievable.
Jack? I put it in. The...
I am. Yeah, it's
Okay,
playing an
great.
advertisement, so I'm
Oh,
just
okay,
waiting
then you're gonna do it?
through that. I'm not gonna make everyone watch the Ken Burns ad.
All right.
I
And I'll-
appreciate that.
About
That seems very
Hemingway,
pointed.
the new Hemingway.
They purchased it
Oh, yeah.
to play before shit like this. Like that's some propaganda bullshit. Come on.
Okay, give me just.
Come on, I
one
came on to be the
second.
wild card one.
Okay, let's. see
right at the
here.
gate. Who the hell's this guy?
There we go. And I'm gonna play it now.
Okay, awesome. And then can you full screen?
You're designated
Yep.
as a
Oh,
terrorist
remove us, you mean?
by the United
Yeah,
States,
yeah.
by the United Nations, by
There we
many
go.
governments. There's a lot of Americans who would say you have no business being a leader as a terrorist. What do you say to them?
يعني أول نحن لا نتصرف كحكام في المنطقة، نحن جزء من الثورة السورية بشكل كامل. يعني الثورة السورية ليست تختصر في شخص يعني، وإنما هي ثورة شعب بأكمله يعني. الأمر الآخر هذا تصنيف جائر، وهو تصنيف سياسي يعني، ليس له يعني وجه من الحق والمصداقية يعني، لأن نحن من خلال مسيرتنا في هذه الثورة خلال 10 سنوات لم نشكل أي تهديد على المجتمع الغربي أو المجتمع الأوروبي، لا تهديد أمني ولا تهديد اقتصادي ولا أي شيء. فبالتالي هذا التصنيف يعني يبدو أنه مسيس يعني.
Jack, could you pause it for a second?
ونحن
There we go.
I just don't want. We can play more of it, but I just don't. I want to make sure we don't get into fair use trouble.
So pause for a second, then come back.
Yeah, actually, you can play it again.
Okay.
ندعو
Okay.
الدول التي قامت بمثل هكذا إجراءات أن تراجع سياساتها تجاه هذه الثورة.
You have in the past said that you were determined to fight the United States and its allies. Have you changed?
يعني نحن كنا ننتقد بعض السياسات الغربية في المنطقة، نعم، أما أن نشن حربا على الولايات المتحدة أو الأوروبيين من خلال سوريا فهذا الأمر ليس بصحيح. لم نقل أن نحن نريد أن نحارب، لم نقل هذا. ثم نحن نريد أن نناقش مسألة يعني أيضا، ما هو تعريف الإرهاب يعني؟ الإرهاب ما هو تعريفه يعني؟ اليوم كل دولة لديها لائحة للإرهاب. أي يعني شخصية أو جهة تدعي خصومتها مثلا، تعريف الإرهاب العملي هو قتل الأبرياء والأطفال والمساكين والنساء وما إلى ذلك، والاعتداء على أملاك الناس، وهذه الأفعال يقوم بها اليوم النظام المجرم، فهو الأولى بهذا التصنيف. إلى الآن هناك اعتراف دولي ببشار الأسد رغم أنه ضرب شعبه الكيماوي عشرات المرات، بل يقال أكثر من 100 مرة، وهدم مدارس وقتل من الأطفال وقتل من النساء، ورمى بالبراميل المتفجرة فوق رؤوس الساكنين في القرى والمدن، وهدم حاضرات كبيرة مثل حمص وحلب، وهذه حاضرات تاريخية عمرها أكثر من 4000 إلى 5000 إلى 6000 سنة. فبالتالي إلى الآن هناك اعتراف دولي بشرعية هذا النظام كوجوده يعني. والرسالة الجوهرية المعادلة بسيطة جدا في يعني التي نريد أن نوصلها أو يفهمها الناس، هو أن الشعب أراد أن يغير حاكم وأن يغير نظام حكم، وأراد هذا الحاكم ونظام الحكم هذا أراد أن يغير الشعب بأكمله، فتغيير الحاكم أهون بكثير من أن نغير شعب بأكمله يعني.
Well, you say here now then very clearly that you, as a former Al-Qaeda leader, will not support what you call external jihad, that you will not support any attacks against the United States.
يعني أعيد وأكرر.
Jack, can you press
حقبة
pause again? Yeah. want
I'm
to just
pausing
interrupt
it
it. Okay,
just for a moment.
Just for a
Just
moment.
so we don't get in trouble
I
by
want to respect. I want to respect
by
the
YouTube.
labor that's being done here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd like to say my involvement with Al Qaeda has also ended
Yeah.
while we're here on break.
يعني كان دخولنا مع القاعدة في السابق هذه حقبة وانتهت يعني. وحتى في ذاك الوقت عندما كنا نحن مع القاعدة كنا نرفض أن يقام عمل خارجي، وليس من سياستنا على الإطلاق أن نقوم بعمل خارجي. هذا شيء لم يكن في حساباتنا على الإطلاق، ولم نكن نفعله على الإطلاق يعني.
So that is kind of remarkable because that is just so let me just close that out. Yeah, I think that's kind of remarkable because they're trying so hard to rehabilitate this guy.
Yeah.
Who's not a good guy. In fact, I should get Max Blumenthal or Rania to come on and talk about him. But like, you know, remember they interviewed Osama bin Laden, and like he had like, this is gonna get me really in trouble, but he had
Jesus
Osama
Christ.
bin Laden had some good ideas.
No,
So, you know,
well,
I'll
first
just
of all,
say it.
his positions on Palestine. I mean, look, he
Sure.
had good
Yes.
critiques of.
Yes.
You know, my mom made this point the other day when she was on talking about the Iraq War. That he opposed. I mean, look, I don't think I really have to defend my mom or my position on.
You should just get to the point of what you really want to
All
say
right.
about this video, not
well, no,
get into
I'm
Osama.
gonna say something. Hold on.
1995
No. When
being
Osama bin
interviewed by
Laden
60
being
Minutes or whatever.
Was interviewed by Robert Fisk, right? That's who it was. Was it Robert Fisk? No, it was different. But Robert Fisk did interview him. I think. Anyway,
I think Osama bin Laden's been interviewed by many people. What is the
people.
point about this
he
person
has,
right now?
okay, this is really controversial, but he doesn't look like a sociopath, okay? And I'm sorry Eugene is uncomfortable with the nuance of my conversation here. But he does not have
Trying to get you
sociopathic
there.
eyes. He has nice person's eyes. I know that's I'm sorry, it's true.
He has
we can
kind
admit
eyes.
that. He has
Yeah.
kind eyes. I think we can admit that. It's uncomfortable,
Yeah.
but this guy just oozes sociopath. Like there is nothing. Like he just looks like a sociopath.
Yeah.
And they
they're
put him in
trying
a
their
suit.
best. They're trying their
his best.
But
Well, what can they do? I mean, they've been supporting them for 15 years, and
Yeah.
they obviously want to permanently. The United States permanently wants to occupy northeastern Syria. That seems
Right.
clear
Right.
from where they are. These are their people. So what
Yeah.
else can they really do but try to rehabilitate them? I mean, this is what happened to John Kerry when he admitted that all the people they were supporting were terrible terrorists, and it was like a hot mic situation. He was like, "Oh, well, I didn't really mean it like that." But this is, I think, a long-running effort, really going back to 2011 to sort of pretend certain people are not who they really are in order to facilitate what the real U.S. goal is in the region, which is to balkanize the Middle East as much as they possibly can to weaken anyone who could potentially challenge Israel or the Gulf state, tripwire that they've set up.
Yeah.
And we can all certainly agree that this guy did not have the dreamy eyes, did not have Osama's dreamy eyes.
I don't think I've ever looked in. I've never really looked into Osama's eyes. I'm a little concerned.
Really?
I'm a little concerned, Katie, that you've been dwelling on his eyes.
of Osama
Wait,
bin Laden.
hold on. I mean,
No,
Actually,
no.
let's not pursue it. I actually
let's
agree
not.
with
No,
Eugene.
fine.
You don't need to pursue it.
Okay, fine, but like also,
I was just making a joke.
I'm just saying. Let me just say something. Like you don't. It's not weird to know what someone's eyes look like when
No, it's
they
not.
are famous for
No.
good or bad. I mean, what?
I-
Wait, that's a weird position, Eugene. Like
I don't
I'm
know if it
supposed
is,
to hate
actually.
his eyes away.
No, I just to have a deep opinion of it. It seems a little outside of the box. It seems like a little beyond what
didn't
most
you-
people when they
All right,
read
fine.
the interview.
You just don't want to. I mean, I'm admitting. Thank you. Someone in the chat said he does have nice eyes. And why I think this is important is because we should just be honest about it. That's all I'm saying. Okay, I don't know who put it there.
I am.
You did?
Well,
That's
yeah.
not even a particularly flattering one, but still, you'll see. He has nice
Can we do a
person
hot or
eyes.
not? Can we all just do an up or down, hot or not?
Oh my God. You know,
I
look.
think Katie should do a think
He's
piece
a
on
fan of
eyes.
it.
Yeah, that's not like no. The reason I find it disconcerting is because like I that's why I notice his eyes because I always remember being like, God, he has like he looks like a person with
Right.
nice. He looks like he has nice people eyes.
Was the point that you were trying to get that at one point the U.S. said that
No,
they
my
were
only
whitewashing
point is that
Osama and
this
they're doing
guy-
it again? Or
No, not at all. That they had
Okay.
a lot of material with no that this guy doesn't work. Like this guy doesn't have nice
work.
person
This guy
eyes.
doesn't work
He
the way that
looks like-
Osama
yes.
worked.
Yes.
Like they were,
He
they,
doesn't
they were
charm
doing
you.
the same
He
thing.
doesn't
The
charm
casting
you.
is worse. The casting is much worse.
Yeah.
This time around.
Yeah, I'm saying.
I think they've
yeah.
actually done better this time around. I mean, it may not be the eyes, but I think more people are confused now than they were about what was happening in, say, the 1980s in Afghanistan.
Oh yes, I'm just saying from a logistics perspective. I'm just saying he doesn't even have nice person eyes. Here, I'm going to
Yes.
show you this one thing. Jack, can you put this in? I have to
Sure.
be, I just have to copy this link and this is just it's uncomfortable. All right.
Well,
Hold
I
on.
wonder if it has to do with like the U.S. like has to like their like pawns have to be increasingly like more crazy and more right wing because like they just
The
can't.
U.S.'s.
Yeah, like,
Our pawn,
like
yeah.
the people who like they want to impose just seem to be getting more and more insane because that's
Yes.
the only people who will work with the U.S.
Yeah.
So this is the picture you're talking about from the Wikipedia.
Yeah,
Is what
yeah.
you're talking
Oh my
about
God.
here?
This
Yeah.
is like
I just want to show
the fact that you
this
even
is-
have a favorite photo is.
I
I'm,
don't have
There
one.
we
I
are.
have to look
I'm
for
honestly
them.
concerned at this point.
Okay, I'm just saying, doesn't he have nice person eyes?
I mean,
You all know he does. You're just not saying it. You all
I
know
have
he
to
does.
be honest with you. I think we have to go
because
beyond
okay is
skin
an
deep.
artist.
As an
He
artist,
has
yeah.
eyes
What
like me.
aesthetically? What do you think?
I'm not even. This is
Like
not
giving
handsome, ugly, anything. It's just like he
Osama
has
realness?
the eyes of a nice person. That's neither
Yes.
good nor there. So anyway, Rasputin also had kind eyes. A nice date for sure. I mean, look,
But did Rasputin have that? Who is paying attention to this? This is like not an element of analysis I even believe to be
Is
real.
Rasputin
People are
cute?
saying things.
Was Rasputin cute?
I mean, I think according to the
you all
Tsarina,
know-
I guess yes, but
you all
we
know
see
that
how that ended up.
I do think that Soleimani was a very, very handsome man, and I've not
Yes.
made
but
I
that's
haven't
a
him that, but that's
completely
very
separate
different.
issue.
I know.
That's a completely
I know,
separate
but I
issue
guess
that
it's
you've
kind of.
raised.
I don't really understand why we can't look like Leni Riefenstahl was a good fucking cinematographer.
in the service of
Nazism.
Nazism.
I know. But
So why
can't
would
we
I
be
spend
honest
any
about
time
that?
saying the cinematography was good? Who cares?
Oh,
Great
wait, are you
cinematography
kidding?
on the way to mass genocide. And then,
Oh,
and then
so
just to
that's
top it
not
off,
important?
then just to top
That's
it
not
off,
important to
how
talk
did
about?
Lenny
Okay,
Riefenstahl
that
even
ma-
be
And
able
there's,
to
I-
Ra- there's
herself?
ugly.
Was
Rasputin.
pictures
Ugly.
of
By the way,
Africa.
has a
Get
pretty
him outta
unfortunate
here.
bald
Coming and
spot.
going.
He has
He does have
no
an
business
unfortunate
being in
bald
this montage. He can go with the what's his name, the Syrian
You
guy.
see, you don't even know.
That
You don't
goes
even
in his-
know.
Oh,
You don't even know.
Oh wait, now you're gonna shame me? You're gonna elevate the bad guy? From
I'm not
Syria?
elevating.
What's
I'm
his
not
name?
elevating anyone. I'm just saying that your
What is
point
his
of
name?
analysis. If that's not the point.
No, I actually think that there's some. Look, we have
The
to
po- the
grapple
po-
with
no, the
this.
point is that the
Ezra
point is
Pound
that
a good poet,
Lenny-
even though he's a fascist anti-Semite. This is
I
a
mean,
huge question.
This is not a huge question at all. This is actually
Yes,
the
it
least
is.
relevant question of all time. I mean, if you were like, yes, I was really smart, but I used it to kill 13 million people, then I don't care if you were really smart. In philosophy, people say this about Carl Schmitt all the time. Well, should we be paying attention to what he said? Was this person a good poet? Was this person this? Was this person that? It's not really that relevant when the thing that outweighs it are the worst crimes in the history of humanity.
To be honest with you, Eugene, I'll push back just a little bit on as far as the
Shouldn't
Leni
we study
Riefenstahl
propaganda,
thing.
though?
I actually do think that I'm like, it's worth noting, how like slick art and stuff like this can win
Exactly.
people over. Like it's almost worth noting that because then you can look at things like our American Sniper and stuff like that, and you can make those comparisons as to how do these kind of nationalist ideas actually take root in people and stuff like that. It's not so much commenting Leni Riefenstahl on how great her work was
Yeah.
as much as it is a way to, we should be aware and be, it's almost like we should be afraid sometimes.
I agree.
of
We
good
should be
cinematography.
we should be
And then it's
vigilant. I think
we should,
it should be vigilant.
I think we
Guys,
should,
there's actually a really good art history essay I would recommend on this. So there's this art Marxist art history theorist Hita Strael, who I really like, and she wrote this essay called "In Defense of Poor Image." And "In Defense of Poor Image" is written in 2011, so it's pretty dated, but it's kind of about how the proliferation of poor quality image is actually kind of more proletarian because it kind of reaches
Interesting.
people, and like it was like kind of in defense of torrenting, like that type of thing. But she references this other essay from like 71, and I can't remember exactly the details, but it's an essay about Cuban cinema in the 70s, and how it was this more it was like arguing in favor of how it was far superior to the like Western imperialist like cinematography, like technology that they had access to through the like their military industrial complex. Like they could like make the best camera and hire the best people and make the best cinema, quote unquote. But this was arguing that like the Cuban cinema was actually a lot better and far superior because it had this like more
it was made by the people. It was made by people. Yeah. With all that said, I don't think that applies to the kindness one sees in Osama bin Laden's eyes. But I don't want to get back into it. I do not want to reopen that particular can of worms.
I almost feel like Eugene is complicit by refusing is complicit in Leni Riefenstahl's work.
Wow.
Because he refuses to look. He doesn't want to look at the hard issues.
Well, believe it or not, I've seen it. A booster. Well, you know, that I guess it would just put me in the same category as the New York Review of Books, of course, that you know, famously boosted her photo book essay on the newer people in Sudan. But yeah, no, I mean, I hear you, Jack. I think it's a good point. Well, because I think that it's in a way an overplayed point, though, because I mean, we know that things are successful because they're pleasing, right?
Sure.
And I think that the point is often overplayed by people who feel, well, if we don't recognize that if it's the reason why it was successful is because it was good, well, just the fact that it was successful lets us know that it had some sort of hallmarks of it. So I don't want to overplay the sort of broader issue, because I feel like oftentimes when it's brought up, it's almost as like sort of a but. Like this person was terrible, but which is what I'm really referring to, as opposed to this is the service at which this person's art was put, this is why it was sophisticated and succeeded.
That's fair enough.
See, Katie, this is why it's important to be really careful with your messaging.
I know, this brings us to another interesting point. So so how do we meet, by the way, you ask? Okay. So did call me out on Twitter. And I wasn't sure on Twitter whether it was no. I'm self-identifying because I'm a boomer. I wasn't sure if they were like, Katie, let me know if you want it. So it was something like if you want to be updated on the discourse or something. And I was like, okay. And I followed back. I can't remember if I was already following. And then this is where I'm really a sucker, because then you guys did a podcast and it was called like and it was like mocking cancel culture, like grift, right? What was it called?
Yeah, basically. The funny name I came up with was transphobes versus psyops.
Right.
And then the like header image was like media as the middle class busy box, which is sort of like this idea that we've been throwing around as like media kind of be like in the United States kind of being this extension of electoral politics, and just kind of like becoming this like weird echo chamber of like mostly middle class people talking amongst themselves, and kind of like often just leaving out the like actual voices of working class people. So we get all of this like kind of echo chamber of like working class whisperers or whatever, who are like, I swear to God, I know what the working class wants, and they are against this or they are against that, and you're PMC, and like it's like, okay, bitch, you're also PMC. Right. What is the actual point of this discourse? Like what are we actually doing? What is the actual political project? Why aren't we like grounding all of our media projects in a coherent politic, if this is like, if we're really going to be real about what it is? And it's often, I think, because media controversy, like it's funny, right? Because like the left kind of emerged, like kind of has made like their own like kind of pockets of media, like kind of against the like liberal sensationalizing and like kind of bullshit. But then we go and we remake a lot of the same mistakes and a lot of the same echo chambers, and like kind of refuse to step out and have actual like self-criticism or like collective criticism that it all gets vented into Twitter, which is like designed to get us to hate each other. Like it's designed to get us to all be angry and to just constantly be in a loop, like literally like in a loop with like a lot of the discourse that I was referring to when I kind of called out Katie was like this discourse with Jesse Signal has been like a fucking thing within like different pockets of trans people online over and over and over again. And it's just like, how can like left projects like fall into like the trap of like sort of like baiting this controversy and then like raising the profile of like shit that doesn't need to be raised the profile of, you know, like
right.
It's just a drummed up controversy that didn't need more drumming.
I mean, you know, Katie, you caught a lot of trouble this week and for the last couple of weeks because you had Jesse's single on the Useful Idiots podcast.
Yeah.
And, for my money, I am a Jesse Single hater. I will just say it outright that I think Jesse Single, actually kind of like straddles this very fucked up and fine line where he likes to do this thing where he's basically like, I'm not touching you. You know what I mean? He's made his entire, all of his bones of his reporting has been sort of building up, these kind of studies that while he doesn't actually go all the way and while he doesn't outright say the like most bigoted thing, all he does is kind of like point to these types of studies and this type of thought, and it's like his sole beat that he covers, you know what I mean? And so like I find him tiresome to begin with, and I actually would say that I think that you and Matt got rope-a-doped a little bit by Jesse Single, you know what I mean? And like and even into this defense of Jesse Single, you know what I mean? Because I know you, Katie, and I don't think that you are a bigot, and I don't think that you're a transphobe, but this week, in trying to defend, I guess, having the booking of Jesse Single on Useful Idiots, you shared out another piece that was like, oh, this is by Jesse Single, and he's saying that, he doesn't believe the thing that people are saying that he's saying, and I guess there's other stuff in that article that is also no good, but, what I think about Jesse is, that, like, I think, to be honest with you, and okay, you were kind of touching on this too, I think that we need to be a little bit more specific about our fucking conversation about cancel culture. You know what I mean? Like, I really do think that just to be a hardliner against all forms of cancel culture and to look at it as though it's, objective and in a vacuum, aside from everything else, is, I think, a little bit misguided. You know what I mean? Like, even aside from the argument that people have Substacks and people have Patreons and all this kind of stuff, and so people have more deplatformed people have more platforms than ever, even aside from that conversation, I guess I would have to agree with okay, which is like, what is the political project here? Like, what is the actual utility of what we're talking about? Because if you just live in the cancel culture is bad no matter what, in a vacuum, that eventually will get you to like Nick Fuentes and like white nationalists and stuff like that. You know what I mean? It's like, I think that we can talk about people like Rania Kolick and we can talk about people like Max Blumenthal as people who have been like pushed out of popular media reporting because they report, about foreign policy in a way that is like not acceptable to the hegemonic, corporate, mainstream media, and that I think is fucked up. But when you start like kind of tying that up with Jesse Single and then eventually with fucking white nationalists and eventually with Trump, I'm like, I actually think that muddies things up, in my opinion. Also, I'll just throw out one more thing, which is like, to get obsessed and to get so focused on, cancel culture and deplatforming in a vacuum in and of itself, I guess what I would say is like, what are you advocating for? You know what I mean? Like, if it is just to like have the conversation about why it's bad or about like why you don't like it or whatever, that's all fine. But is the alternative like that editors should be required to publish people even if they don't want to, if they don't agree with their views? You know what I mean? Like, is that not also a form of cancel culture? You know what I mean? If it's like, are we advocating for journalists to get tenure or something like that? I just don't know. I'm like, I've seen so many people get obsessed with this idea of cancel culture, and so much of it comes down to like people getting mad at me in my mentions. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I swear to God, it's like people are like, I'm canceled. They're canceling me again. And it's like, or you should just stop reading the comments.
Yes,
you know what I mean?
stop.
Like, stop looking at the comments if you don't like people being mad at you.
It's true. And like, if you listen to Jesse on the interview, he even says like, I'm not canceled. I'm actually doing great. I'm actually doing better than before. I'm actually fine. And, I guess it's just a little sad that some people, and I find out, I like hear that like some people in certain newsrooms don't like me. And it's like, okay, like, do you want every newsroom to like you? You want like these well, that's the thing with Jesse Signal too, is like, he wrote this cover story for The Atlantic, which is like one of the worst liberal propaganda rags out there. And so you have to understand that you're going to be used by these platforms. Even if you're hired by them and it's like a pretty good job, like if you're a New York Times opinion columnist, and maybe you're a socialist, who can I be referring to? Somebody. Well, like, this is part of the fucking deal. Like, you're on these big liberal platforms and they're going to use you as much as you think you're using them, if not more. So you have to be aware of that. And you have to be aware of like how your points can then be used by like the conservative ruling class to, completely obliterate health rights for trans people in bills and in legislation. Like, they can use your language in the bill. And like, that's often the point of these rags like The Atlantic and the New York Times, is to drum up these wedge issues and find out what's going to like fuck with the working class and get everybody to fight amongst themselves some more.
Yeah, I think I really appreciate that point. Okay. And I think the point you made of understanding the political project is so important, and even to the point of understanding the history of these magazines. I mean, The Atlantic, we can make the direct parallel, right, to the mid-90s, the politics around welfare reform, the politics around crime. It was The Atlantic, it's the New Republic, it was all these people, and everything was not the bell curve. Like, everyone always points out and says the bell curve. How could that ever get into something like the New Republic? It was so racist. Everything was not at that level. But I think the question we have to ask ourselves is so much, but sort of, who is the conversation being created for? And the very act, in the same way of the 90s, of questioning the issue of like, are Black people more violent naturally? Are they, more less intelligent naturally? Right. And even when it's done in the softest possible ways, and even in the reverse, you look at people like William Julius Wilson, who is, one of the sort of intellectual authors behind welfare reform and this idea of the culture of poverty, that poor people themselves are to blame. Indeed, he always would say, and continue, and has always said, well, listen, I never said I was for welfare reform. Didn't you read my last chapter? I said in the back, I was for something totally different. So how can you hold me responsible for them doing this thing that I never explicitly said I wanted to do, just using the intellectual atmosphere created around this questioning aspect that I think is relevant? And I think, again, to go back to the role of these institutions, the issue is not, are there complicated stories to be told about oppressed and marginalized people, and interesting and important conversations to be had about the genesis of white supremacy or racism or transphobia, whatever it may be. The question is the greater visibility of oppressed groups. It's like when the greater visibility of Black people, diversity became a thing in the 90s, then all of a sudden there's a huge cottage industry of like questioning whether or not diversity was really good and whether or not we had all these liberal ideas that we wanted to do the right thing, but we weren't. But what did it really mean? It meant questioning the idea that there should be Black progress. And I think when we talk about trans issues, I mean, you know, why is this coming up now? Because trans people have waged a heroic struggle, and through, in many ways, the medium of the movement for Black lives, which is an untold story, you know, finally raised these issues to a point where we're forced to debate them. A cottage industry is emerging that I don't think is really about the little sort of the way people try to make it. Well, I'm just asking this question, or I'm just trying to raise that issue. It's really about the uncomfortability people have that trans people are more like in the world saying we exist.
That's right.
And we're going to continue to exist.
Fucking say it to our faces. That's like my thing with this. Like, look into my eyes and tell me that I'm not a person and that I shouldn't deserve rights. Like, look into a trans child's eyes and be like, you're not who you say you are and you don't deserve puberty blockers. Like, just try it. Like, just try to actually know a trans person. Try to actually like have a trans person in your life and like and say and try to pull this shit and try to pull this like, oh, I'm just asking questions. I'm just like, you know, there are certain questions that of course like people are like very comfortable with like talking like in a friendship level, like talking about like and getting into like the kind of like controversial or like it like weird and new aspects that people don't quite understand. Like that's like one thing, but when you're writing about it as a journalist, there's like certain responsibility that you need to take for like this subject matter. And it's quite obvious that he did not have the full picture when he wrote this Atlantic article. And there's like a whole number of like trans scholars who could like very easily like, you know, trans healthcare scholars, trans history scholars, like all of these people who you like are like through online, like are easier than ever to like contact and talk to, are just like, you know, not considered. And yeah, I appreciate you, Eugene, bringing up that just asking questions thing, because that's like a huge part of like Jesse Signal's whole deal is he literally, I don't even know if you knew that coming in, but yeah, that's like kind of his whole deal is just to be like, oh, I'm just asking questions, and I don't want a mob of what was the one he said, he tweeted like a moralism, like, oh, I hate moral panics, and it's like, bitch, you're doing a moral panic, like you've drummed by like by giving credence to this like small like group of sort of like gender critical like academics, you're creating a moral panic that comes like directly from like, you know, bourgeois interest. It's not like it's not like you're speaking for like working class moms who just don't understand like, oh, what's happening. That's not what's happening here. Like and you know, it's just misrepresenting a group of people and then fueling a lot of like just fueling more hatred and fueling more controversy in it. And it's a good, you know, there's financial incentive for doing so. It's very lucrative to throw trans people under the bus, because then you get all of like, the internet is full of reactionaries. Like a lot of like the people who really know how to play the internet games, like are like deeply reactionary people who just love like to juice the stupidest dramas. That's like something we talked about on the episode we were critical of Katie a little bit on, was this book, It Came From Something Awful. And like there's this history kind of baked in that of the internet of like wanting to like just give money towards like voices that are like seen as you know, like just starting shit.
The other side of the conversation, you know what I mean? And this is also like the function of opinion pages, and also like a function of like, of liberal thought, really, is like this idea that like, well, we must hear every side of the argument. You know what I mean? It's like this kind of, this is a very liberal way to view things, is that like we must hear every side of the argument. And that's what gets you like, fucking Corey Lewandowski becomes a CNN contributor. You know what I mean? Like that, this kind of like, we must pay equal credence to all sides of the idea, is sort of a liberal tenet.
Because they'll just pick whichever side suits their financial needs best. So if they find a side that they like, that they can then juice in the mainstream press, they're going to do it. And people need to be aware that like you're a pawn that can be utilized in this way. Like you might think you're a big independent Substack dog, but those contracts are temporary. Like, I'm sorry. Like, you might have a nice deal with them right now, but we don't have like, there's like, it's individualizing like journalism, which like to me, I don't think is possible like to ever actually individualize, because it takes so many like collective voices to make up one story.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like you were saying before, Eugene, like the New York Times is absolutely, there's no incentive for them to do their